We will start this meeting. If everybody could rise right for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I don't see any youngin to do this. Thought Cindy was the youngest here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome to January here in this year, our first meeting of the year. So from that standpoint, I'd like, let's go to number 2. I see most of you are frequent flyers, most of you, so I will guide you through this. Number 2, let's go the roll call. Clerk Smith, if you could take the roll call, please.
Mayor Turnbull.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Morosky Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Janetti.
Here.
Councilmember Krenz.
Here. Great. Thank you very much. We are all in presence here today. We go to number 3, but before we do that, I just wanted a moment of remembrance for a friend of all of ours, Scott Frush. Scott Frush is from the township. He was a trustee since 2019. That's like a board member for council here. He did so much for the Community Norfolk Education Fund. Also, he's on Parks and Recreation with Barbara Morosky Brown and I, and we talked about him last night at a board meeting. He gave so much to the community. Last week, I did a note on Martin Luther King, how he did all these things for the community. So did Scott Frush. As I said, he's not only a friend of mine, but a friend of all of ours. We're on a lot of committees. 53 years old of a massive heart attack. You know, life is precious. Remember that each and every day. But appreciate it. What he did for us. He and I would kid. We both went to Eastern with a business background and got our undergraduate there. He went on to Notre Dame, and then he got a doctorate. I went on Northwestern, but he always got that doctorate and stuff. But he did an awful lot for all of us, and I considered him a friend. And keep the family in your hearts and prayers, and others. We've had quite a year here. Keep the families alive in their stories when you think about these things. So again, to our friend Scott Frush, thank you. So with that, I'm going to go on to section number 3, the approval of the agenda. You have the agenda in there. We had some input before we got to the consent. Do you want to start that?
Yeah, I'd like to ask if council could remove item N from the consent agenda. This is the placemaking grant. There's been some questions about it, but we also want to be able to replace the resolution with a new resolution. We had a last minute tweak to it. I'll explain when we get to that point what it is. But if we could move it to the business agenda so we could discuss it and then replace that, that would be
So
appreciated.
you'd like that to be 9C because we have 9A and B there.
Correct.
You want it on new business. Okay, so that will be, N will be 9C. Okay. Got it. Is there anything else that we'd like to put on the regular agenda before? We're going to look at the consent, but I thought I saw some notes back and forth today. Anything else? Okay, excellent. Very good. So we have a new business 9A, B, and C now, and that is off the consent. Excellent. So with that change, do I have a motion
to approve as amended?
We have a motion. Do we have support for that motion? We have support for that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Great. We have a new agenda there. So at this point, we are going to public comment. Public comment, again, you have 3 minutes. And on that 3 minutes, talk about anything you want. It will be 3 minutes. Know when you come up to the podium, you're giving us the right to have your name and everything you say on tape. We're very open here. We've taped all of our committee meetings, so you can go back tomorrow and see what you said or didn't say. You have 3 minutes. It's about 50% more than others. We actually, every section, we're one of the only in the metro areas that we let you speak at every section. So you will have another time. Everything that's on the agenda today, I will open it up for public comment. This is everything that's not on the agenda. All yours. I think, Mr. Long, you would like to speak to us tonight. Thank you.
Jim Long, 400 Fairbrook Court.
I sent a communication out today after reading the consent agenda yesterday, and I'll just paraphrase this real quickly that Alan Terrace wanted to replace a hot water storage tank. We bid it, and out-of-town contractor bid it, and they were 30% above our price. But they said they would warranty the parts and material. And it was described as a robust ad that was accepted, and they were looking for approval on this. Well, anybody in our business, I think Bob Buckave can understand this. You don't charge for warranty work because you suck it up. I mean, you're going to get the parts for free, and then you got a little bit of labor. If you did, you'd never get a job. So, and then I went on to say this tank, and I sent you the pictures of it. There are no parts to this tank. It's a storage tank. Yet they want another $1,842 to cover the warranty for parts. They don't need any parts. And now a contractor who's out of town, 30% above our bid, they're asking to award it to this contractor. Now, whether you award it to us or Jensen's or what, I don't care. I mean, we'd like to have the work. I mean, we brought this to your attention. But I gotta think that $1,842 put back into the coffers of the budget of Alan Terrace is probably a significant amount. So I sent you a picture of the tank. It's jacketed, it's glass lined, top of the line, and something's a little fishy here, in my opinion. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. And I would suggest we get back tomorrow, even though this isn't Q&A, let's, if we could get back with Jim tomorrow, but we made a decision and why, but if we could do that tomorrow, great. I know we don't respond, but I would like us.
Cindy Brazen, 370 Fairbrook. Before everything gets started, I just want to say I'm 2 weeks post-op and I had to haul my butt in here tonight because I couldn't watch on Zoom and participate in the meeting.
Oh,
This has been discussed with several council members. We've brought it to everybody's attention. They say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We want to re-add it. It's been litigated. It's been settled in other places. It's time to get back to Zoom so that people, I mean, I could get here, but there's a lot of people that couldn't, or because it's so cold. Some people just won't brave the cold. And I just think it's a really important thing. I think all city council, all planning commission needs to be on Zoom. I think everybody needs to know what's going on. And I think it'll go a really long way to showing transparency, which is what you guys say you're all about. So let's put it out there and let everybody have a chance at it.
thank you, Cindy. We were one of the first to go on Zoom. We had some opportunities. We are looking at that. Those are good comments. Bob.
Yeah, Bob Buckade, 145 North Center. I just want to concur with what Jim said. A storage tank is simply that. It has no parts other than the connections, the inlet and the outlet. And to even think that you'd pay a warranty fee of this kind of money for virtually nothing. I just wanted to support Jim and what he was saying.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody else? Public comment on things that are not on the agenda? Going once, going twice? Great. We will go to, everybody got the written communications that were in here, and we got those from you, Jim. Everybody got those. I wanted to make sure, and they got your pictures there. Absolutely.
So
Make a
for the
comment.
written communication, I think we did, it was uploaded later this afternoon. We did get a, through our public comment portal. We did have a comment, and I thank that individual. Thanks for submitting that. And I know when Mr. Long sent it and it was distributed to us, but it wasn't through the public comment portal. So that's why it's not in there. So
Okay,
we just like, maybe in our newsletter or something, just keep that front and center, what that email address is for public comment, so that we can have it.
good point.
So it isn't that we didn't read it, but it's not in the public comment because it wasn't sent to the public comment portal.
Good point. Yep. Yep, good. Thank you. We will go on to section 5, consideration of approving the consent agenda. We've already approved the agenda. You have the consent agenda. We've already moved something off of that. I'm looking for a motion to go. There's an awful lot of things on there. It's all public knowledge from all the way to O on there, a lot of paying the bills and other things. But do I have a motion to go forward with the consent agenda tonight?
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Do we have support for that?
Support it.
Okay, we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. We have an agenda and a consent agenda. Let's go on tonight. Presentations. We were having the Cemetery Restoration Committee here tonight. They weren't quite ready. They got a lot of stuff they want to tell us, so they're going to go to the next meeting. So if you're here for the cemetery restoration, I apologize for them. We are going to really dazzle you, aren't we, with the Sustainability Committee presentation and a whole triad of presenters. So no pressure, what have you. It'll be on tape. It'll be distributed throughout the state tomorrow. So go right ahead. Mr. Gutman.
So noted that for the clerk, can the clerk amend the agenda because we should have taken that
Yep.
off the agenda.
Yep.
So
If you do that, that would be great.
yes, so there's, and somebody's looking for it. All right, so.
Excellent. Mr. Gutman, let us know when you're
Ready to
ready.
rip?
Let her rip. You're on the
Okay.
clock. No, go. right
Okay,
ahead.
so good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Gutman, 900 Spring Drive, Northville. I'm a member of the sustainability team and I have been since its inception. So thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. I'll begin. I'll be followed by Susan Hafley and then Kathy Spillane. We recognize you have a lot of things on the agenda, so we will be expeditious.
Great.
Next slide, please. The sustainability team's last update to City Council was February 6, 2023. So just about 2 years ago. Tonight, as you see on the slide, we will provide you with a sustainability plan update. We're going to take a look at our past accomplishments, not all of them, just the most recent.
Okay, good.
Present our future plans as we know them today and end with a Q&A. We hope this will result in council's continuing endorsement of the sustainability team. Next slide. So from the birth of the sustainability plan in 2020, we have based our strategy and focus on 3 pillars: environmental, economic, and social. The point being that sustainability initiatives to be successful encompass not only environmental concerns, but must consider our economic health as well as our social needs and connections. So our team has worked diligently to balance the 3 pillars in developing our own strategies and objectives. Next slide. The team's composition has been largely the same for some time, with one exception. Wendy Longpree is now the city liaison for our team, and a welcome addition, with the participation and support from Mike Domini, of course, Lori Ward, and Justin Quagliata. Collectively, you can see that this group brings a variety of expertise to the table, and that has served us well.
Great.
On a personal note, we will sorely miss Lori Ward for her contributions and her friendship. She's been a valued member of our team for a long time. We do, of course, look forward to working with the one who will take up her position, but Lori will be missed, and we do not look forward to her departure. Next slide, please. You'll like this one because there is no new news here. This has been the role of the sustainability team from our inception. It has not changed since we last presented, so we can go on to the next slide. Since we first presented the sustainability plan to council, and that was in 2020, this has been our emphasis. First, go after the low-hanging fruit projects. You see some examples listed there. And secondly, the various elements of the Northville Downs project, of which there have been many, and we have followed and been involved in all of that from the very beginning. Next slide, please. Okay, recent accomplishments. 2 standout items: the library tree carving, which is right out there. And as most of you know, the Tree Champions group who coordinated this effort, they're an outgrowth of the sustainability team, and it's run by Jim Porterfield. And they have been very active in the community, and I think that was a welcome addition. Secondly, was the green ordinance audit, which is currently in process. Overall, this effort was initiated to help Northville guide development, and I guess what you would call an environmentally responsible way. So that's ongoing. There's a more detailed list of more of our accomplishments in the appendix if you want to take a look there. The next category, collaboration, has been very important to our progress and our efforts, and we'll continue to collaborate with many groups, as you can see from that list there. In the area of advocacy, research, and support, 4 items stand out. We have advocated for the 7 Mile and Hines roundabout with non-motorized amenities. We've researched applicable grants that support city council priorities. We participated in Oakland County and State of Michigan sustainability conferences, and those are excellent resources for new ideas and innovation for our group. And we participated for a few years now in the Michigan Green Communities Challenge, where the city obtained gold status, and that's a significant accomplishment for Northwood. Lastly, and not on this slide, I wanted to acknowledge the city's progress and activity relative to the strategic priorities, specifically the environmental sustainability section of that document. In the 2023-25 document, 11 actions were identified to pursue and implement, of which all have either been completed or at least made progress. I know you're going to meet on this next week.
Sure.
And as always, the sustainability team is here to help, just to let you know.
Thank you, Mr. Gutman.
So next slide, please. So going forward, we will continue our ongoing support in the community. You see a summary list here. I won't elaborate on these topics because Susan and Kathy will explain them in more detail. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up Susan.
Thank you, Dave. Susan, it's all yours.
Thanks. I'm Susan Hafley. I live at 308 South Wing Street, right down the street. We see all of you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'm going to start with 2 of our new initiatives for 2025. You could switch the slide. Thanks. And if you could, yeah. I think everybody here in front of me at the podium knows about this project. Even George Lahanis has been involved in discussions about this project. Believe it or not, we've been talking about and planning and working in the background for over a year for this project to come to fruition. The project grew out of our commitment to promote the arts and culture in our community and to support the social pillar of our mission, which so far we have not had a single social pillar project. This slide presents some of the key things we hope to accomplish and why it is that we think that we need poetry right now more than ever. So the idea behind the project Rise and Write, which is what we're calling it, is to promote writing and specifically poetry in our community and the surroundings. Very much like the Tree Champions, the intention is to promote writing by reaching out to the community and becoming a hub to support both ongoing and new efforts. I'm happy to share that John Carter is our champion and also our council liaison for this project. He's also a member of our team. Tonight, we're asking for your support and agreement so we can proceed and kick off this project to the larger community. We've had lots and lots of support for this project already behind the scenes, but as I keep telling people, just hold on until we officially launch it. So we hope to get your support, and I think from talking to most of you, I hope that we have it. So that is Rise and Write. And the next project I'd like to talk about, and we need a new slide. We have talked a lot about green space for years now, a couple of years, particularly as we've gone through some of the development process with the Downs. Our focus this year is to think about green space from a habitat preservation and restoration perspective. This shifts our focus from green space as one of our major resources to broadening the focus specifically on habitat and ecosystems. Can I have the next slide? Everyone on the council, the chairman of the Planning Commission, Donna Tinberg, Derek Smith from Parks and Rec, Mike Dominy from our DPW, George Lahanis, and Jim Porterfield from the Tree Champions were all provided a copy of the book, Nature's Best Hope. And as you can see here, this book helped us zone in on key factors that are undermining our habitats and suggestions for correcting them. Next slide. We think we can apply these ideas through education by forming partnerships and empowering the city, the residents, and students to work together to counter the loss of important habitats, as well as to bring new ones through common sense choices. And so we're looking forward to hearing what you think about that. And Kathy is going to take up our last new initiatives. Thanks.
Excellent.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The two strategic objectives for pursuing the green ordinance audit were number one, to reduce pollutants entering into our river. And secondly, to reduce flooding both locally and regionally. This is a concern as annual precipitation averages continue to climb, and we've been tracking that since the 1960s, and they're going up. How do we do this? Simply put, we plan to direct the water into the landscape using green infrastructure tools. This approach is called a low impact development. So in short, the intent of the audit was to revise ordinance language to reduce barriers to and encourage the use of LID solutions. Next slide. Here's where we are so far. With Birchline Planning as our consultant, we kicked off the project in May of last year. 343 of our pages of our ordinances were reviewed in detail with the focus on stormwater management and landscaping. You'll see on the right-hand side and over to the far right of the image that in addition to the redlining, there were loads of comments. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Our consultant also provided us with preliminary proposed language to the landscaping and screening ordinance, which was reviewed by the Planning Commission in October. At a high level, our consultant was concerned that due to conflicts within and across the ordinances, it was difficult to introduce new LID language without creating further conflict. An overall cleanup of the entire code was recommended, and these are the consultant's very words to us. This conclusion was substantiated by the numerous comments that were detailed in the markup that I mentioned earlier. Justin and Wendy and I took a deep breath because that's a big, tall order. And we felt that we couldn't carry forward this recommendation to the Planning Commission as is, a full massive write-up. We needed to rethink our process. Next slide. So we propose that we reorganize this a bit and look for opportunities to coordinate the introduction of LID language changes with the Planning Commission's existing queue of work whenever possible. So if they're working on, say, for instance, the parking ordinance, that's when we may come in with suggestions for LID. We'd ask that the city consider adding a few priorities, which may not be on their list, such as the items we've included here. And lastly, I'm not sure if all you are familiar with this, I think you are, the sub-team approach worked very well for the tree ordinance and the generator ordinance. So we'd support something similar to that in order to vet feasibility and cost benefit before you start going in there and change the language. So, my final slide, titled Exploring Northfield Downs Integration, is intended to mean that we're in the early incubation stages of this topic. Last year, our team began discussing how and why we might create a welcoming process for the Downs residents. This led to initial conversations with Northfield newcomers and the chamber, both of whom have some of those components within their scope. But perhaps Northfield Downs integration should be broader in scope. The parking study, which you'll hear about later today, and I read ahead and went through it.
I'm sure you did.
Predicts that the majority of Downs residents south of Beale will likely drive. Wow. So what can be done to influence less driving and more walking? Now, if we recall what Jeff Speck taught us, and I'll say for the people in the audience who might not be familiar with it, Jeff Speck is a leading expert in walkability around easily around the country, if not the world. And he's written magnificent material on the topic. And besides sidewalks, what he taught us is that people walk more when there are more social encounter opportunities and when the walk itself is interesting. So that makes us ask, what cost-effective placemaking tools are available to activate the Central Park and Katy Street, which is right in the path of those folks in the downtown, to reduce the demand on our parking spaces, make it enjoyable to walk. So if this makes sense to you, we'd like to explore it further and then come back with you, to you with an update. Next slide. So that's all for me. We'd be happy to answer any questions, the three of us. And then, as Dave mentioned, we'd like to ask for renewal of the city council's support for the
Okay,
team.
so we will open it up, but before we do, let me thank the three of you on behalf of, I know you're representing everybody on the team. This was one of the first activities in 2019, the gestation, to go forward for the city. So I thought it was a great opportunity for them to integrate with each and every one of the 27 boards. And we as the council accepted that. I don't think we ever officially accepted it as a board and
We did.
from here,
We
but
did.
we're going to do that tonight because I heard it wasn't, but we are going to do that shortly after we got together. And I see many of you out there that I sat down with. We put together a Ford Field Task Force, a Riverwalk Task Force, and the farmers market. You can see all the work that has come together, and the sustainability has been part of all those. So I just wanted to thank you for all you've done and all the support, and each and every one of you have represented. You've been the chair people of different ones of those committees. We've come so far, and you've touched each and every one. And early on, I went to all 27 board meetings, and I would let them know, you will be touched by the sustainability group, and you have touched most of those groups over time. But I thank you so much. So mine is to thank you. Everybody else will give you more input. So I'm all in. Others.
Well, I would just say thank you very much for your work and coming back. I didn't realize it had been since 2023 as an update.
Wow.
But I say that, but it's because since that time, you have come to city council when we're in the budget process, because you have in fact worked with city administration to
Yes.
say, where are there places within the budget that are just cost effective, right, for doing that, or no cost, and that we could build into our priorities, they could build into the budget. So maybe I'm just remembering that because
No, we've been
you have
very-
not been absent for.
We've been very visible.
Yes.
And made a lot of public comment. We just haven't done a formal update.
Yeah, so I appreciate this. It's comprehensive. I would like to say that I support whatever effort you want to go forward with, including the ones you presented. Because I know one of the things I've noticed is your adaptability and flexibility. Something comes up we hadn't anticipated. And somebody from your team, if not the whole team, is stepping in to help with that. And the tree ordinance is one, a
Yes.
recent example of that. So things that really stood out for me, certainly into the habitat restoration, I think figuring out ways to adapt that in stormwater management, near and dear to my heart, particularly Riverwalk Task Force. And also, but it's part of the solution is we can control what we do in city-owned property, but also there's education, and use of pesticides, what are alternatives, plantings. And I know the library has done, going back years, where they've had some education series on that. So I fully support, just keeping that up and doing more in that area. And then a brilliant idea on the Downs, working with newcomers in chamber and also on walkability related to the Downs. Central Park is going to be our only way to activate and draw in a walker that's maybe only, 2 blocks away to that near term to get them to go that extra 2 blocks, right? So, and there's not activation as it's currently laid out by the developer on either sides of that. So, looking at that from the perspective of what we can control, which is Central Park, thank you. And the time to do that is in near term, not long term. So again, thank you very much for your efforts. It didn't seem like it had been that long. And I continue to just look forward to and welcome your involvement on this. So thank you.
Absolutely. Others on council.
All right, I'll go next and I'll admit I'm biased because I am a member of the team. So I'll disclose that proactively. But one just general note that I wanted to give, the green ordinance audit. So that was funded by sustainability from the team. I think that's important because you're passionate about a topic, going out, finding the funds, getting that information, and then that has provided good input as we've been going back and looking at all of our ordinances and thinking about how we're operating, where there could be opportunities. We talk often about how we're a volunteer-led community. I can't describe how many hours these three and the members of the sustainability team contribute to Northville. And so I am so appreciative of that. Thank you so much for that. We are lucky to have them and people like them that are that committed to Northville. The other thing I'm just going to highlight and this is the bias part, but the focus on building community and with the Downs. So we'll talk about it with where I know DDA is going to be talking about the importance of developing connectivity to that as we establish a new neighborhood in Northville. We are going to need to be very proactive as a community to make sure that's connected so that it becomes easy for people to come back and travel back and forth, their access to the downtown, the potential commercial implications of that. But there's more than commercial. It is a community element. So how do we make sure they feel welcome and part of our community? And I love that that's the next passion we have as we're moving forward. So thank you for sharing your time, talents, and your passion for our community. I do have a motion that I would like to make as well. I know it's not within our packet, but I think it would be important for us to recognize our commitment to sustainability as the group is ready for me to do that.
Absolutely, when they're done on their comments, because why that came up too, it was brought to my attention, one of our committees didn't want to maybe meet with them because they weren't an official committee. So I am going to absolutely support that. We will vote that in today. You have my blessing to meet with everybody any day, but we will officially so we will get that in one second.
We'll have to move that to a new business item because we're under presentation.
Yep.
I fully support it though.
Oh, do it formally or informally. I'll ask our experts, but any other comments for them today?
I'll just co-sign to everything, and I think this is going to be a really big year in terms of a lot of the impact we're going to see, unlike anything since I've lived in this town. So that this time next year, it's going to be extraordinary seeing some of the things that are in place. So I'm really excited, and I think we're all lucky to have you.
Absolutely. Good. Anything to add?
Thank
Ms.
you.
Janetti?
Just thank you.
Good.
We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let me look at my legal counsel. Should we add that to 9?
I think this should be 9D.
Okay, 9D, then we'll come
Sorry.
back. There'll be a really quick
Sorry.
9D. And you don't have to hang around that whole time, but we will make you official for this.
I fully support the motion.
Yep,
And I
absolutely.
thought we
I mean,
already
you haven't
did
heard the
it.
motion, yeah.
Yeah, but I believe in something of that nature.
I suspect based on what you said that I will
Okay.
be supportive of the motion, but
Super.
it's just that at presentation mode.
Yep.
So it's.
So with that, if anybody has any comments from the audience, this is your time. Going once, going twice. Thank you very much. Appreciate each and every one of you, each and every day. Super. So now we will go on to public hearings. We have none tonight. It's outstanding. Unfinished business. We finished our businesses last time. New business, we will go to consideration of approving the requested file of the downtown parking study. So this is one, as you're coming up to the mic, we commissioned a study. This is not saying it's great or it's not great. We're just saying we're accepting that they did a study right now. So in my opinion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Last June 2024, City Council awarded a contract through the RFP process to Fishbeck to perform a parking study. This parking study was in collaboration with our community development planner, DDA director, police chief, myself, and many other key stakeholders in the city, including the parking committee. John from Fishbeck is going to be getting ready to present here. He's right here.
Great.
Myself or anyone else who was involved, happy to answer any questions after.
Great.
Where did it go?
Sorry. I think he just slipped up for a second. He'll be right
Okay.
Good evening.
Good
John
evening.
Forster with Fishbeck. Thanks for having me.
Great.
Let's talk about parking.
Excellent.
And as I go through, if you've got a question, please ask. You can hold questions in or you can ask however you want.
We will try to hold it in, but we never seem to be able to.
Well,
Go
yeah, I
ahead.
think we need to do it one way or the other
Yep.
because.
Let's hold your questions to the end, get through it because you might be able to answer those as you're going through. We don't.
There you go.
even though we've read
We're
it.
gonna wait.
Yeah, let's wait until the end. Let's wait until the end.
Because George was gonna
Yep.
speak to something, and he's not here, so.
Okay. Go right
So
ahead.
the first thing we did was really try to sit down and say, what are the goals? What do we want to accomplish? And these are what we came up with. We clarified the reality of parking, what's actually going on with occupancy levels and are the time limits and all the tools that you have in place working, to understand what optimal parking looks like, talk about walking distances, talk about the seasonal street closings, talk about area growth that's going on, talk about tools for future needs, and then a little bit on how zoning is impacting parking. So those are our goals, and that's what we started with to go forward. Next slide. Go ahead. So we went through and we logged every space in downtown. The on-street spaces are in GIS format, Geographic Information System format. Every space is noted with where it's at and its regulations, 2 hour, no time limits. All the parking lots, both public and privately owned in the study area, were all logged as well. And so you now have a complete inventory on GIS of every parking space in downtown. Then we went through and we counted cars for 10 hours, every 2 hours on 2 separate days, Friday, August 9th and Wednesday, August 21st, to really see what your occupancy levels were. So you now have 2 full days worth of occupancy counts in GIS. And we'll talk more about that later, but that should be a baseline for continuing to gather data and put it in that GIS system. It's a great tool for keeping track of things over time. And then we also reviewed your planning documents and a lot of the things that you've been going through over the years as you continue to work on your community. So just to talk about that supply a little bit, we broke it down into 10 blocks. It runs from 10 blocks. It runs from the library over to the parks. We did concentrate on the core of downtown, which is the blocks that kind of surround Center and Main there, because almost all of your public parking, or a large majority of your public parking, is in there. Large majority of your activities in there. So those spines are really, we broke things down to the core of downtown. So just taking, call this a heat map, just taking a look at it. Red is over 90% occupied. Yellow is over 80% occupied, and then green is 61 to 80% occupied. And as you can see, those two lots on the north are heavily used. This was at noon on that Wednesday. So I'm going to talk more about those two parking lots as we go ahead. And so just looking at the core and those times that we gathered data, noon was really your biggest time in general. Both days it was 74% on the Friday and 71% occupied, that core area at noon. The other big thing was that Friday you had an outdoor event, Friday evening event, and downtown got really busy. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but what a great evening. It was a beautiful day and just people everywhere enjoying themselves. And parking occupancy got up to 85%. The top deck of the main center garage was full that night. So that was good. Next slide. So just occupancy in general, the public lots north of Main are busy and close to full on a lot of weekdays and those weekend evenings. Your Friday night event was great. Almost all the parking in the core was taken. During heavy usage times, most of your availability is south of Main Street, and that's where your parking availability is. Next slide. So when we talk about what is optimal, when does it work best? Public parking works best when it's 80 to 85% occupied. That way people can generally find a spot, and you haven't paved half your city. Empty pavement's ugly and it's a waste of land. So that 80 to 85% is right there is where you're optimal. Once you get over 90, people have trouble finding those spots. They're either unused ADA, they might have a snow pile on them, or any number of things that cause them to be hard to find. So once you hit 90, you're going to get, we call it effectively full, but you're going to get regular complaints if you're over 90. In the core area, effectively full is 108 or 817 vehicles So on that, on the August 9th, that evening event that you had, there were 66 spaces short of that. And then during the lunchtime on August 21st, there was 183 spaces short of that. So the gist of that is you don't really have an overall deficit problem. You do have specialized on the north side, those lots are full. Overall, you have enough parking downtown if people are willing to walk between everything, and we'll address that a little bit more. And I'll just say, parking utilization can change quickly, and we'll talk a lot more about measuring that as you go forward. Next slide. So talking about these two blocks, 3 and 7, and people say that they're full, they feel full, and that's true. They were full a lot of times we counted. They are full because we went through and we took every building, we took their square footage, we took what kind of business was in there. Different businesses have different intensity, draw more cars. A restaurant pulls a whole lot more cars than say an office building does. And so we compared everything. And what really the issue is, the buildings on those blocks draw more cars than you have parking on those blocks. Therefore, people coming to those buildings have to park somewhere else. It's not bad or good, it's just the way it is. You have about 75,000 square foot of building on each block. And with those different intensity of uses, they draw more cars. So saying that, there will not be more available parking on those two blocks unless your building occupancies drop, your higher intensity uses were to become lower intensity uses, or you were to build a parking structure on those to create more parking. Otherwise, those are going to stay the way they are. The big risk in my mind is we don't see higher intensity uses like bars and restaurants becoming offices. We see offices more likely becoming bars, which means the intensity and the demand for those parking lots is probably going to go up in the future as you go forward. And then you're already there where there's limited parking for people driving in from any of your new developments, or you just have you have a growing region as well. And I heard a number of people say, oh, we're downtown for more than Northville. Well, there's several communities that consider us their downtown.
Right.
And so you do have a lot of people coming in from different places. So that's blocks 3 and 7. Please. So on-street parking, that's your best product. That's what people like the most. It's close to where they're going. It's intuitive. It's easy to find. I commend you on having a lot of loading zones. A lot of cities are behind on that, especially as we come out of COVID and a lot more pickup and drop off. It's good that you have. I'm glad that you do. Just to talk about this, the summer closings, there are 33 parking spaces that you close in the summer. Those impact businesses differently. I talk to people from different businesses. And if you are retail and you count on people parking out front and running in, it's not great for you. If you're a restaurant who gets more visibility and can expand a little in the summer, it's awesome for you. So it's just different impacts on different people. What I will say is the fullness on those lots on the north side. The 33 spaces aren't impacting those. We already covered that. They're full because those buildings draw that many people. So it's 33 spaces that are lost for those 6 months. Next slide, please. Time limits. So your tool that you use for regulating parking is time limits, 2 and 3 hours. There's different tools you can use, but little smart comment there. There's no need for rules if you got plenty of parking. So you do need those tools to move people around and make sure that that you have spots for employees, but you also have spots for your patrons and visitors who are spending money. The thing about time limits is they're labor intensive. They're hard to enforce, but the remedy's a ticket. You either get a ticket or everything goes well. And no one likes to get a ticket. The people writing the tickets don't like to give them. So that's one of the downsides of it. And you just can't stay longer. If you have to move your car if you want to stay over 3 hours, you have to move somewhere else. It does do a good job of segregating user types when the patrons comply. Like these spots don't have an hourly regulation. They're clearly for employees. These spots have a 2 or 3 hour regulation there for your visitors. It does do a good job of regulating that if you have enforcement and people comply. What happens is the biggest benefit that it's free, you don't charge for parking, can be overlooked when lots are full. They tend to, I heard complaints. I can't find a spot. The fact that it was free was irrelevant at that point because I can't find a spot. So that's what kind of you get with time limits. Next slide, please. Enforcement, going back to that idea that time limits are labor intensive to enforce. It's just that the officer has to go there twice. They have to go, they have to identify the cars in that spot. Then they have to go back 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours later and identify that they're in violation. And then when you add in 15-minute zones and 1 hour and 2, there's a lot of passes that the officer has to make through each location every day in order to enforce that. It is just labor intensive, and I'll leave it at that. And enforcement's been recently light due to COVID and some court decisions that were right here in Michigan, but had national impact. But the chief and I have talked about this several times. He's planning on more consistent enforcement now that we're kind of out of COVID and moving forward. And your system really needs it. It does need enforcement. If there's not enforcement, people will do whatever and you won't have the spots that you need. Next, please. Little feedback from the stakeholders I talked to. Again, that limited availability in the lots to the north. Questions about the street closure program. Concern that continued growth may lead to a shortage of parking overall. And then the whole idea of the changing business mix downtown, concern over how that you're losing a variety. I think it's great that you still have your peak as weekdays during lunch. Most communities don't have that anymore. They're entertainment districts and they're dead till 4 o'clock. So you still have a good mix right now, but that did come out when I talked to business owners that they're concerned about losing that mix. So your leadership structures, you have the parking committee, and I did meet with them, and I talked to several members of the parking committee on the phone as well. The police kind of lead your parking operation. They lead the committee. They provide enforcement. They make traffic orders. Anything that needs to happen, they kind of head that up. The DDA is on the committee. They have input on policy. They talk to their constituents a lot and are involved in that. Public Works maintains your facilities. They also serve on the committee. And then City Council approves ordinance and policy changes and approves the budget every year for the parking system. Next slide, please. And so talking about the budget a little bit, your past fiscal year, your free parking system cost a little over $300,000 to run. So you don't have any debt on your parking structures, which is great, but you do have ongoing maintenance. And if you don't take care of them, they will fall apart. I promise that. So about over $100,000 a year of those costs are paid by the DDA, and the rest have been paid out of the parking fund. The parking fund balance currently is being drawn down more quickly than it's being replenished. So that $300,000 is not an issue today. It may become an issue for you in the future. And so that means council just makes an informed choice to support the parking system each year when they approve those annual budgets. So let's talk a little bit about walking. We did walking maps across downtown, and the one on the left is centered in that main center lot. So if you park in there, where can I walk in downtown within 5 minutes? And then the green one is centered in the lot on the northeast upper corner of town. Where can I walk? Long story short, you have a great compact downtown. You can get almost anywhere, side to side, top to bottom in 5 minutes right now. I don't think there's an unreasonable walk anywhere across downtown. Again, for able-bodied persons. Next one, please. So just to wrap all that up, your current situation is active, vibrant. Your supply is adequate as a whole. People appreciate free parking. I heard time and time again, we prefer not to have paid parking. You don't have a lot of development within that core area of the CBD, but you got a lot going on around you, both in your city and in the region. It's very accessible. Patrons and employees can get where they're going. Your organizational structure is minimal, which is nice. You know, the thing is, if you do something like paid parking, all of a sudden you got to hire a whole bunch of people just to collect money and keep track of things, and it becomes one. Right now, it's simple. and that's a good thing. Simple is good. And enforcement's been light, but it will become more regular going forward. So we'll shoot right into recommendations. So I don't see a need for significant changes right now. I think staying with free time limited parking can continue as your tool. Enforcement does need to increase and come back. If you don't, people will just take advantage. I think your administrative structure can continue, but they're going to have to be a little more active in how they manage. Impact from your developments that are coming through have to be carefully assessed. I'm going to talk about that in more detail. And the city should have a plan to increase parking supply if and when it's warranted. And while I'm not recommending paid parking at this time, it's a tool that's not off the table. You may need it at some point. And just like time limits, it's just another tool to manage your supply. Right. Next, please. So planning for the future. What I'm again, no big developments, but you got a lot of regional growth. Conduct parking occupancy counts 6 times per year. And I'm not talking about doing it 10 hours a day like we did. Let's grab a noon here. Let's grab a Friday or Saturday evening there. Let's get in the GIS system so we can understand our growth. And if things are truly changing, are we starting to get up near that 80 to 85%? Are we over 85% where we're starting to be in trouble? And then have a plan to add parking. Identify location, size, and some of the attributes you'd like to get out of additional parking. Maybe some people would like to spend the money for a garage on the north side. Maybe some people would like to walk a little further. There's different options there. I think the most important thing is to start talking about a funding mechanism for that. Either way, the city's going to have to come up with money if they're going to expand parking. And so to have, if you finally come to the decision, we need to expand parking, well, then you're a year out because you got to figure out how to pay for it. So having that plan and it thought through a little bit may help you move forward more quickly. Next slide, please. So some options to increase access to what you have. There's the little grass lot that the city owns south of the post office. I saw a sketch from 2006, I think. So there's been talk of a parking lot there on different occasions. You have some underutilized parking north of the city. There's a couple lots north of the CVS. The lower level of the main center structures underutilized. There's an opportunity to get a few more spots there. I don't like this one, but you could push people out into the neighborhoods a couple blocks as well. I think that's your last resort.
Yes, it is the last resort.
It's your last
My
resort.
block was already 100%.
Next one. We were asked as part of the study to look at options for parking structures. We did lay out several options. I just have this one for tonight, but there are more. There's opportunities on all 4 of those blocks. You would have to take down the main center garage or the Katy Street garage to do it. But you could do structured parking on all 4 of those blocks, especially the 2 parking lots north. You could gain. Prices are $49,000 a space right now. So they're not giving them away. But we did put together several options if you'd like to look at those. But what I want to assure you is if that was a choice you wanted to make to have more close in parking, the option is there. Next. So enforcement, I just encourage you to continue with the chief's plan to provide consistent enforcement. Good enforcement doesn't write that many tickets. People know that they're out there and what's supposed to happen, and by and large, they comply. Enforcement staff should be part of the community. Their job is to help people find the right parking as much as it is to cite those who don't. I think a nice forgiveness program, first time ticket, a warning. Maybe you get 1 free one a year. We always have a bad day. We overstay when we don't mean to. A free one here and there is not the worst thing in the world. I will say collection rates need to be monitored. If people know they can rack up tickets and never get caught, then enforcement, then you've done a lot of work for no gain on compliance. And if possible, citation revenue should support that enforcement. That's your biggest labor mechanism or cost. Slide. So some operational recommendations. Your time limits should reflect your busiest time. So I'm recommending that you extend that out till 9 p.m. One of the reasons is, you know, if an employee shows up at 2:30, parks in a 3-hour spot, makes it till 6. I mean, I don't expect you to bust them too bad from 5:30 to 6. They really can park in some of the most premium spots all night and block those from patrons and not have broken any rules. And so your time limit should just extend to match your busy times. And the chief and I have talked about this one. You have a program for allowing people to park off street overnight. I think just make that as easy as possible. If someone makes a decision, I shouldn't be driving, make it easy. And just continue to evaluate EV charging. You have a good system. You have a lot of EV chargers spread around. Continue to measure their use and expand as necessary. I mean, it's up to you whether you want to lose money on EV charging. I don't generally recommend that. But I think to keep an eye on it and make sure that you expand the capability when it's needed is important. Next slide. Administering parking. I'm recommending an annual report from the parking committee to council so you understand where it's at. That would include occupancy levels, how the finances look, how enforcement's going, and future plans. What are we looking at in the next year? What are we looking at the next 5 years? And that information, again, I heard transparency when I first started. Put that out there on the website so people can see it and can understand it. Your parking map is up in the upper right. It's a little more focused on buildings right now. You know, be a good time to update it to focus more on actually parking rules. And now that you've got it all in GIS, someone could do that in just a couple minutes. It would be easy to pull through. I think you can maintain your current structure. I will say the chief's job is public safety, and parking doesn't often rise to the level of public safety. So one of the things in the annual report should be, are we burdening the chief too much with stuff that someone else could do? Because that job has to remain public safety as the highest priority. And continue to promote alternative transportation and try to get as many people to come downtown without their cars as you can. You know, so you have great engagement with regional efforts. The sustainability team was here today talking about how do we connect people. Keep working through those things because everybody who doesn't bring a car leaves it for someone from outside of town who might want to come. Next one, please. So talking a little bit about the downs, and that has come up a couple times tonight. So from this intersection of Center and Main, about 1,200 feet is generally considered. People will be more than happy to walk. Outside that, they start to get a little itchy. And so you see about half of the downs is within that 1,200 feet and half is outside it. Those numbers we put up, I heard that referenced earlier, just generalize people's behavior. You might get more, you might get less. We don't know who's going to live in those places at this point in time, but generalized behavior. Once you get 1,200, 2,000 feet away from downtown, they're more likely to get in their car and see where they can go. Actually, please. And this came up too, but that pedestrian connection at Katy Street, I think just you need to look at that. That needs to be enhanced to really encourage people to use that. And so the opportunity to do more there is a great opportunity. And likewise, when Foundry Flask comes through, what are the opportunities to make sure that that's inviting for bicyclists and pedestrians to avoid getting in their car and coming into downtown? Making those gateways and building those up so that people want to use them is key. So just to summarize things, you know, consistent enforcement, and the community needs to back that. That's not being harsh on the community. That's just making sure that the policies are being adhered to. Regular occupancy counts via GIS so you understand what's going on. Plan for future expansion, have a plan in place, and evaluate things regularly so that you know where you're at. And you know, quarterly meetings of the parking committee should be looking at that and understanding when things are changing and how they're changing. I do believe they will continue. Next slide, please. Last one. Things will continue to change. So I'm asking you to just measure and plan, evaluate, and keep moving forward. I'm sure some people would love to have all that angled parking back on
Mhm.
back on the street, but you have a lovely downtown, a beautiful street. So just keep measuring and planning as you go forward.
And Town Square was parking at one time when I was young.
There you go.
A little bit, so. Is that it? I think?
That's it.
So let me
Ready for
start. I'm
questions.
sure you'll get a lot of input. I want to thank you very much for doing the study. I always have great expectations, so I consider this 1.0. I'm looking for the 2.0 study too, because we always look at what down the way, working with DT and maybe to double deck or triple deck behind main center and put solar panels on top and pay for the parking, you know, or other lots around here, just in preliminary discussion phase. Love all the work. We will keep you busy, or we will keep looking at parking studies. I always have great expectations, as everybody knows up here, because they represent the city on everything. But I think it's a great starting point from my point. But I thank you very much. We know we have a lot of spots. They're just not in very good spaces. You know, they're far away, more than most cities, and I'm the chair of the Council of Western Wayne. They're all looking for parking. We have a lot of spots. They're not very good spots, you know, and you're trying to see where we can do better. We will do better, but preliminarily, we will have discussions on the next phase. But that is, I'll let everybody else give you all the hard questions alike.
Sure.
I'm thanking you. Who would like to start?
I'll go. I just have a.
We're not bashful.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is the most important, money spent, money saved, money thrown at, whatever you want to say. I think it's a big, I'm not gonna say problem, because parking's a problem no matter where you go, except for the mall right now. But, money wise, I think that's the biggest priority is parking. The enforcement part of it on there, taking advantage it's a sort of a short of employees, that's a bad way to describe people coming to Northville as taking advantage of our parking spots. So that's where I kind of have a little bit of an issue. I think we can handle a little bit of the employee stuff, just like old school. The chief can come and say, guys, this is where we want the employees to park. I don't think it needs to be, I mean, you can do a study on that, or you can drive yourself crazy, but I think, you know, a conversation at first, since we haven't had one, would be a good start for employee parking. Not that it has to be designated, but just give us an idea where you want them, and we'll try. The forgiveness, coming to Northville every weekend doesn't really call for forgiveness. You know, the getting a ticket, the forgiveness part of that is they want to come every weekend, right? You want them to drink here, you want them to eat here, you want them to watch a concert here, you want them to get their eyelashes done, go to PT. Moving their cars is not, I just don't think that's a practical option, moving your car. I mean, you're gonna play bags, grab a drink. By the time you get a table at a restaurant, you've had 3 drinks. To move your car isn't what I would see as a good solution. But overall, thank you for this. I wish I could say to you, now what do you recommend us to do? I don't know. I think that all falls on the chief now, but thank
No
you.
pressure. Al.
Yeah, like I thank you for the study, but I'm just, and the overnight thing, I think we need a QR code, because it's very, try to park your car overnight if you have customers that drink, as I do, or you are a drinker. Try to leave your car overnight, and while you're drunk, call the number that you're supposed to call and put your license, you know, it's gotta be help, because there's a reason they're leaving their car. It isn't because they don't, you know, there's gotta be like a QR code, you scan it, you put your license plate number, maybe send a picture, and that could possibly be what we make it easy, you know?
Absolutely.
So that's it for me. Thank you.
Well, that's what we talked about, was just, you know, let's find there's got to be an easier way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're doing is not an easy job. So thank you.
And on the employee parking issue, that's exactly your issue, is let's have them, for better or worse, employees park a little further away, save the spots for the patrons, and then measure and see how that goes.
Because without them, we don't have patrons.
Right.
So we got to find a place for them to park.
Both, they count on each other.
Yep.
They count on
Absolutely.
each other
Yeah.
for sure.
Others.
So,
Go right ahead.
yeah, so one, I'll echo what Laura said. This was a much needed study. It was money well spent and a long time coming, you know, to have a comprehensive study. Also, I appreciated your summary of your method. So, and I also agree with that. The only thing I would mention is we have peak parking counts for that Wednesday and Friday during peak parking season. You know, August is prime, right? Those few months, even, well, the 6 months are, but certainly those few. So I don't know what the situation would be if you did it in November or February or March. But I think from a method standpoint and for our investment in your study, find out what it is when we're at max, what we suspect is our highest utilization level. Because we have so many people coming here and using our downtown in the summer that we'd want to know, you know, how are we meeting that need? But so I don't see that as a shortcoming. It was a choice and I don't disagree. I just don't know what the scenario is in those months. So I very much appreciate this and your scope and information, but you're going to see, yes, got lots of posts. So what I see is a little bit of a victim of the method of submitting this study. And so what happens is, one is good executive summary, right? And this is your presentation. But the way it is in our, you know, the package we have, it's small print, very small print. I don't know if anybody read it. It's a nice executive summary. But it's small print. This is part of your report. So when we pull up that report, it should have the executive summary and then it has your findings and recommendations follow that. The other is it should be consistent. What you have in your executive summary should flow and be supported by your findings and make sense relative to your recommendations. When the format that's used, and I think probably for 2/3 of the comments I have on any individual page, it was trying to fit your report findings, which are, I believe, in hearing you speak, are robust, but you're trying to fit it into a large print soundbite because you need to fit it all on one page. So what I have is several areas where, again, we want, whenever there's a report, we're not going to have the luxury of a year from now trying to figure out what you meant, right? And trying to do an actionable item. So when I say it's us, the city, or whoever is working on it. So it's having some, you know, a full, you know, a partial sentence becomes a full sentence, you know, and if it's an opinion, it needs to be there versus a finding or a recommendation. So I do have those to go through, but because of, I think and I'm not, so my, everything that I've noted is related to how it's presented in your report versus any additional work you'd need. Because my looking at your scope of work and what data that you did put in here, there is no additional work needed, right? It's making sure we have the richness of your findings and clarity in what you found. So what I, just in general, what I find fall into basically 3 different categories. One is things being omitted. And that would be, we've got a recommendation, you know, we might have something that was in your scope of work like ADA spaces, right? But it doesn't flow through, so I don't see it in the report. And that's more than exception than rule, but that's a big one for me, is where are ADA spaces? Do we have enough of them? And are they in the right places? And that's completely omitted from here, although it's discussed as part of the scope. Most of the things are a bit of inconsistency where I'll see something that, and sometimes I think maybe because it was just addressed a little flippantly, like it was kind of humorous, but the findings need to be consistent within themselves. And then if you have a recommendation, your findings should support that recommendation, right? So I see that's where I see the inconsistencies. And then a few things are just unclear. The one that stands out, well, I mentioned about, I think it's a short word. You're trying to fit it into one bullet on one line, and you really needed a full sentence, and that probably would have solved the issue. So it's that, and it's just lack of clarity. And the one where I think it was good. I think you used, it seemed like you were using good criteria. It was that urban density, metric that you were going to use, but yet then I wasn't seeing how that metric flowed in the data you had below. And so, you know, I don't know what my sense is that our time is not best used in going through all of the comments I have, you
No,
know.
to me, this is questions and input.
Well, no,
If you have
but no,
questions
but
for
it
John.
is because we're being asked to submit, being asked to file this as a final report, and I'm not able to support that.
Right.
Without
We're
the,
accepting, we got a report.
well, I think the only way we could do that is that it's a draft report, because this has things in here that accepting it from the country, you know, it's, now, it's not burdensome to deal with these, but just as it sits, such a valuable body of work that you did, and to have those in there, that's where I'm at.
I'm happy to discuss those with you and
Yeah,
make sure we address them.
okay.
Excellent.
No, but overall, like I said, your scope of work, your method, I just want to make sure we're capturing it, right, in terms of.
Understood.
And we could go with that as a draft report. Go right ahead.
No, those are good comments by both council members. So a couple things, I view parking as one input of a complex system. So we have to take this in its completion, but also balance it against other inputs. So that's something that we will have to do at a complex system level. So we have to make sure we're doing balance. So we got to look at systems that complement each other, or solutions that complement each other when we get to the idea of future parking without offsetting other benefits and features. So one thing I consider, having been an alumnus of the Planning Commission, is I consider this work that you've done, and thank you, is a support document that needs to go as an informant into our master plan work. And that's where that work needs to be balanced. So where I'm struggling on some of this is when we talk about the future, and this is outside of your scope, but I'm looking at it from a customer on behalf of the city, is we need to tie this into master plan development, because there are some quantum steps that would occur here in the future state that we would have to start thinking about immediately, pending what master plan looks like in build out, because build out in this community could go well beyond Foundry Flask and the Downs. There could be 5 or 6 other projects I can think are possibly in flight. And we need to be able to have that foresight ahead of time so we can react, like to your point. So I would say that there's going to be more work needed. I'll get to that at the end, but in the end, this product is going to be critical as we get into master plan work. So I'll ask Justin at some point when we're going to look at when the master plan comes. I think we're due, and I think it's critical, so we need to do that. So I think if I'm looking at just a couple questions in here, so you had effectively full is 817, but I didn't see a total. Was it about 900? Were inside the 10 blocks or the 10 boxes? I don't think I saw a total number of spots, just I kind of back calculated to about 900. Okay. I didn't know if you had that one. So if just looking at the 2 times that you had, so we were at 74% capacity on an August afternoon and 85% at peak. So the goal, I think you were saying, you went through it nicely, is peak is your desirable is 80 to 85%. Do you have data for, or can you share data on, let's say sister cities that we might have, like Plymouth or Milford or Dexter or Berkeley or Royal Oak, in terms of how we look at, let's say, off peak and on peak as reference?
I do have some data. I finished up studying
If you can
Ferndale.
share it, I don't know if you
Yeah,
can.
no, it's when it's public, it's available.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, some cities have it worse. Ferndale is at 97% on a busy Saturday night. They don't have a spot to spare, you know, and if you've ever been there and tried to look for a spot, you know that.
Yeah.
So I would say on your event night, that Friday night that was really busy at 85%, everybody still found a spot. I mean,
Right.
Worst case, you end up at the library on a night like that, you know, and so,
And I've circled Plymouth for 20 minutes and
Right.
ended up missing the band shell show.
Mhm.
It's just, so this
Yeah.
was before I served on council and devoted all my efforts to small business in town. So in terms of when we look at kind of the peak usage at these 2 points though, you say 80 to 85%, which I understand because you'll have double parking, you'll have ADA access spots and everything. And I want to touch on that is, what is the goal, let's say over 365 days? Do you want to meet your peak with available parking, or do you want to be off the peak a little bit and say maybe 98% of the time, 97% of the time, we can accommodate peak parking without risking overparking, because overparking turns us into a strip mall. So do you have an opinion on that? Like, let's just say hypothetically that this August event was our peak event without, let's say, a major festival in town. But that's let's say those are like infrequent peaks relative to all 365 days. So I'm just trying to figure out, do you recommend we act on that?
No, I think your Friday nights, if that's half a dozen in the summer,
Let's say 20.
20, I'd say you should.
Friday nights.
Well, it's Friday and Saturday.
It's Friday
long
and
summer in his
Friday and
world.
Saturday.
But, you know, parking at the library, parking, you know, there was still plenty of spots in Main Center. I would not plan extra parking to accommodate something that's 20 nights a year.
That's my point here. So as we get into this, I don't think, and I do a lot of this stuff at work, is I don't think you want to design to this, let's say, singular peaks, but something below the singular peaks and have those spillovers, because over parking and too much asphalt and taking down green space
Good
for
luck.
those 3% of the time we might need it, might not be the right answer. Is that?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Okay, so I want us to be careful that as we receive this, that, you know, the goal might not be that you want to meet peak parking needs for these events, because they are not the
They're
majority.
events.
Yeah, they're events. Okay.
Yes.
I need more detail on if we have it. I'm with the mayor pro tem. I was hoping to get, maybe we can talk about it past here, is the location and number of handicap parking spots, accessibility, and if we have recommendations on that.
I've got those all, I have a map with all those on it.
Gosh.
So
Right, good. Yeah.
And then I'll be looking for that recommendation as well too, to make sure that we are doing everything we can on that front. On EV charging, I think there's a lot of emerging and maturing data on when and where EV users were going to charge, and if they would do it in a downtown scenario versus at home or somewhere else. So we got to talk about that. And where that works, and what, if there's a recommendation, I have my own thoughts on EV usage and expectations. I'd like to try to figure out how many places would we dedicate to something that might also be an infrequent activity in the future? Do we put them in the back because we know EV drivers just want to make sure the charger works more than anything and are willing to walk? I want to be able to plug that in as well. So going back to, like, just real quick on the 74% capacity on that noon on the 21st or whatever that was, 12th. So that was sufficient. So we're good most of the time. 74 is actually a little below the 80 to 85%.
have room for growth.
You got room for growth there. So we might be bursting at the seams someday, but as we look at it right now in a summer at noon, we're okay. All right, so EV charging. What I saw on the heat map that really jumps out to me, and this is something where I want to bring you back in on this, is I don't think we're quite there yet on connecting Main Street to south of Main Street. So you see, you have the parking that's over here that's overutilized, and I think there's reasons for it, because we're the Main Street community, but also Katy and connectivity and walkability, which the sustainability team has done. So when I look at the blue zones with unused parking, that tells me my first priority in the near term is we got to find wayfinding that's going to allow that to happen. And I imagine part of the reason that isn't the case is it's a hill and not everybody wants to take the hill up to town. So I think there's a lot more work we got to do on that. And I want to make sure that that work that we develop gets into the master plan, because we have a ton of spots here that are underutilized right now that I think we got to consider. Also with respect to the downs, now I want to get clear language in there about the expectation of the downs and self-parking and what the PUD expects, especially for businesses on Katy Street. And what that looks like, that was my concern at the beginning on here, is we weren't able to pull in south of Katy and what that might mean to some of those businesses on Katy Street. So we need to have that kind of more comprehensive story on that. You know, I want to have it spelled out for everybody. Does the PUD require self-parking? I think if you know the PUD, you know the answer. But then again, kittens don't live in boxes. They get out and they move. So what would your expectations be over time, and like where that would go? So I feel like maybe to completely the opposite of what I just said is maybe Katy might be a challenge that we have to start looking at, but we don't have that part of the story, which is where I feel like we're missing something here. Yeah, so that was it. And then, so as for where we're gonna go tonight, I think I'm willing to accept a draft on this.
Mhm.
I'm not willing to accept it as is. I think there's some holes we gotta fill in, at least if it's clarifying statements or if it's those few things that I want to make sure we plug in because you're the expert. We're counting on you to kind of help us with some of those items I just pointed out. I think a workshop outside of here soon is probably appropriate.
And a subcommittee, maybe Barbara,
Or
yourself,
something- and
paying for your time or your.
Not that, no, I'm not necessarily saying we need more committees, but maybe another
Nope.
council workshop where
Right.
like Barbara can go through some of the more like detailed edits. And then maybe we can, with the comments we have, bring in some of that more information, bring forward ADA access, EV charging.
Yes.
And make sure that gets into the report because that'll go on to different people in different seats in a couple of years. We're all here tonight, but we can't have the tribal knowledge in the air, but not have it be published. So that's why I say if we accept it, I want it as a draft, but I think there's a little more work to do.
Said earlier, I'm looking for 2.0. This is 1.0. It's a
So
great draft.
That's what
I
I'm at,
think
but
we
this
have
is
a
not, I
lot
don't
of
consider
comments.
this a final
So-
win. That's it.
Anything for Ms. Janetti tonight?
I said my piece.
Great. Anything, John?
Going last with this group is always fun. I will, I can cut things out along the way. But, so my take was I started off frankly, in the short term, it felt good. It showed that we have sufficient parking. I wouldn't say we have ample parking to meet the needs of the city. And then about an hour later, I found myself starting to get stressed about the future, and I'll come back on that piece. Couple of the points that have been made that I had in my notes as well. Employee parking, I know, is a passionate topic of a number of our business owners. The other thing I point out is every time I talk to them, it's a passionate topic, and then they talk about how they want their employees to park in the right lots. So I think that's a huge opportunity for us to work with them to identify, because they're thinking about their employees just opens up more spots to drive sales for them. So I agree completely with Councilperson Janetti's comment. I think that's a good opportunity for us to work together. ADA parking, we have talked about numerous times that it is an opportunity. Opportunities with data are easier to solve than opportunities without. So I'd greatly appreciate any information there to help us think through not just we need X number of spots, but where are prime spots? What are some good strategies that we should be leveraging? That would be greatly appreciated. And then I agree, comparison data of what does it look like in other cities? Because I don't want to be a mall where we have ample parking, because malls aren't doing all that well right now. I think we want to look at what is when we said effective is 80 to 85, understanding what other communities have, what they look like during their peak periods, what those peak periods are, is just good knowledge for us. The pause that I had is, we are, like I said, I think right now we have sufficient parking. We talked about the Downs, we talked about Foundry Flask, and if anyone's driven outside of the city of Northville, you see all the developments that are forming. When I saw if 10% of the Downs drives to downtown, that's gonna be 40 additional cars. And then we go down to the peak and we say we had 66 additional spots on August 9th. That's not a large window for us to manage. Now, my first thought when I see that isn't, okay, it's time to build a deck. It's let's look at all the options available. But I think it's something we need to start planning ahead. With regard to EV charging, this is just a general note. We don't lose money on EV charging. This was actually a strategic conversation with
We
the
make money
Economic
on it.
Development Committee. The model is actually set up. We make dozens of dollars off of our EV spots. But
We don't lose any money.
but it covers the maintenance, it does bring revenue in, and we are tracking that on a monthly basis. So that is data that Economic Development and DDA has that we can leverage and look at. I think the key there is exactly what was mentioned, utilization. So how many spots should be driven by? How are they being utilized? How does that compare to other spots? And should we look at reassessing where they're at? I don't think we need to lose money on it. And I'm glad we've made that decision. Pay parking is, to me, a non-starter. There's nothing that annoys me more than going to Royal Oak, paying my parking, and then half the time still getting a ticket. We don't need that. But I want to be cognizant. You showed DDA is contributing 100,000, and we have $200,000 in costs, I'm rounding, that is coming from a parking fund that's decreasing. So this gets back to we have to plan, because if we don't get in front of this, that parking fund is going to eventually decrease to zero. And then we're going to have to look at the general fund, and now our local taxpayers are paying taxes to maintain all of our parking spots. So the ask that I have as I think about this is a challenge for us on looking at other options to drive turnover. So that's the partnership with the businesses, looking at how we encourage utilization of our underutilized lots. Because even at the peak times, we had major lots that weren't that far that were at 40 to 67%. So there's definitely opportunities there. I think we do need to look at plans that could increase parking supply over time. So not a knee-jerk reaction, but I think we should start brainstorming where we would put in new lots, what the access of those would be, and the benefit associated. And then I think we need to start thinking about a long-term strategy for funding our parking system if we're right now watching a parking fund that's starting to decrease. No, again, I don't think that should be pay for parking. And I don't think it should be on the chief to go collect that from residents. So let's have some conversations. My ask in terms of next steps outside of accepting of the draft report and making sure we're kind of thinking through this is we have our strategic planning process coming up. I think that should be a part of it. We have a great partnership with DDA. We've talked about connectivity, ways that we can increase walking between the new developments in town. But I think a larger conversation with DDA on what's the best way to manage this with the chamber, on how we can work with our businesses to try to drive parking. I think leaning into those partnerships and the knowledge that those bodies have is critical. And then I want to make sure we're supporting the chief, because I know that like his job is public safety. So as we're thinking about it, how we can help provide information and support throughout that process. So that's my general summary, but I appreciate, again, data makes decisions a heck of a lot easier. So I appreciate the information, and frankly, it makes very clear where long-term some of our challenges are going to come here.
Absolutely. I'd like George to comment then.
So just everyone knows, I texted the chief and said he's got to fix the parking situation. He's on it.
Fix it, Alan.
It's actually all set.
It's easy.
So just to jump in
The
and
chief
say.
just texted me and said, you got a ticket for parking.
He sent somebody out.
I know.
So just to say, this is not really just with the chief, so I don't want it to look like that. We have a team that addresses these issues. This was actually set as a priority 18 months ago with council. It's a priority from literally 18 months. Conduct a parking study, including facility and spaces inventory, compare revenues and expenditures, maintenance, capital program, and long-term funding options. The next priority was to develop a plan to address parking enforcement. So all the staff, Mike Dominy, who's very involved in parking, Lori, Justin, chief, myself, saw the need a while back to say we've got a parking system that people are complaining about capacity. They're complaining about the fact that we have looked at the fact that we had to stall enforcement because we couldn't be chalking tires. And there was this general issue that we weren't putting enough money into the maintenance, and the parking fund was decreasing, not enough revenue coming into the system. So we saw all that, came to council, and council supported this direction. I think this study has put us on the track of addressing the right questions and looking at it. So I think that from a strategic priority, it's gone right to this. It's not really just the chiefs to formulate a plan, but certainly we're going to be coming back with priority discussion on Monday, this Monday. And we will be looking at next steps in parking, next steps of parking enforcement to talk with council as well. So this is sort of the beginning of the conversation. We knew that when we did this. This is not going to have all the answers. We just wanted better data, but we've got to continue to monitor and improve. And I know council wants to have some more discussion with John, but I think it really is a good start. And this really is an ongoing discussion to get to keep the right size parking, keep revenues coming into the system. But
looking at options
and looking at options and moving along. And I think providing a system that works for our residents, works for our businesses. And I think that one thing we did find, which is I think we have adequate parking, but we just have to sort of rebalance the system. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about with our enforcement. So overall, I think it's gotten us in the right direction, but it's not all the chief's responsibility. All of us will be working with council on it to get to the solutions that you need.
Great expectations for the chief.
Yes.
So before I ask for a draft motion here, anybody that's in council chambers have any comments on this? Come right up to the mic, full name and address. Yeah, you're gonna be a counselor here pretty soon.
Corey, 137 Main Street. I just thank you for the work. I was just listening to comments and everything about the city council, future planning, those kind of things. And my first thought is that using that report as part of future planning is dangerous. There's only 2 days worth of data in there, 2 days in the summer, and not even on Monday, where you know that there's like no parking. So even for the balance of numbers, I feel like that data is incomplete. So to even like start to put them in tables like part of a future planning, because I know that's a huge development, it's a lot. If this is going to be the framework, it's got to be more robust than that. It at least has to be a week in 2 different seasons, right? Like it can't just be on probably the 2 best days of the year in August downtown on a Wednesday and a Friday. It's hard to say it's going to be part of like a future plan for something that's going to be enormous. So that was the first thing I heard. But thank you again for the work. It was like I actually went through a lot of it and I learned a lot. So thank you for doing that. But I just feel like in terms of the robustness, it's got to be a bigger study if it's even going to be considered to be part of future planning for the city. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good comments. Ooh, and go see that little one. Anybody else tonight? Come right up.
Hi, Amy Bonzer. I don't live in Northville. I manage a store on Mary Alexander Court. And in addition to employee parking and the ADA accessibility, I'm just wondering if there's data to show that 2-hour, 3-hour parking limit that is being considered and proposed is the right number, the right amount of time. Is there measurements from other municipalities to show that that's how much time the average consumer is spending in a downtown? It doesn't seem like enough time to me, but I'd love to know if the data supports otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Welcome. You braved the cold tonight. You braved the cold to get here tonight all the way down the street.
Nancy Curie, 661 West Main. I couldn't agree more that you need to do something about the employees. I've lived here over 30 years and it's been an issue forever, but I think there are some things you can do to make it work, to help encourage people to park in the lot down behind Northville Square. And one of them is to lead by example and have no parking before 10 a.m. in the circle out here or on Wing Street, south of Main, maybe on both sides of the street. I also think no parking before 10 a.m. on the neighborhood streets, because a lot of the people do park in the neighborhood and then walk to the business. If you come down, drive through town, when I go to take my grandkids to school at 8:30, Main Street, Wing Street is full. And it's like, the parking lots are empty. Who is that? Yeah, there's some people at Tuscan Cafe, but most of it is people, going to their office jobs. So I think there are ways that you can encourage people or make it a little bit more painful for them to take the prime spots. I'm also not opposed to paid parking. I think prime spots should be, there should be a fee for them. Again, you won't park in them all day. What I would caution you on though, is encouraging people who live downtown above some of the businesses to park in the neighborhood for a number of reasons. One, even though I don't live in that neighborhood, cars park and they never move. And then you have company, and I realize you don't own the street, but then you're without a parking spot. They don't move, they break down, they impede cleaning the streets and shoveling and doing the snow. But more importantly, I'll go back to what the police chief of many, many years ago said to me. I'm sure our police chief would agree that at night, when the police are patrolling through town, they're driving down Main and they look down those side streets and they see a parked car. Today, they know that car doesn't belong there. Maybe we have a problem, that we should look into. If you just got cars randomly parked on there, you put an additional burden on our police force. And I don't think that's good, because I think they are going to be strained a lot. The last thing is that lot south of Main, it's not used, like you said, because of the hill. So please don't count on anybody walking from the downs up to downtown, because typically people say, if I can see where I'm going, I'll park there. They want to see where they're going, and you can't see anything from down there. And most people can't walk that hill. I know, because I walk it, I'm usually alone. And I think if I fall, no one will find me. The last thing is, now I lost my train of thought. I just think you just need to be really careful and really deliberate. And I think you really need to look at close-in parking and making it not available, maybe before 10, maybe before 9. There's a way to handle it, but I think you could be more creative and free up the spots. But I encourage you to lead by example right here at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Anybody else? Right on the time. Anybody else from council going once? Council chambers going once, going twice? Okay, I'm closing that off. From the discussion that I've heard, I'm not looking for a final resolution of this, but maybe a draft motion to go forward. Is that what I've heard from?
Well, I guess, right, well, if we just take the simple motion, I think
Yep.
just a discussion
Right.
about that, but
You have a
Simple-
sample in there and
yeah,
say
the
draft
sample,
to
oh, I
it.
have it.
You have it in
I
front
just
of you.
had it. Okay. It
Right to
says,
your left.
move that the 2025 downtown parking study be received and filed. So I guess it would be move that the 2025 downtown parking study be received as a draft. But I think my question is, what is our next step? Because it's not far from being final. So how do we proceed to that next step? Is it a workshop that could involve all of city council? Do you
could it
want
be
a
waiting-
couple committee members that have a lot of notes to meet with Fishbeck? It wouldn't be a
So in
long
my
meeting.
opinion, as I said earlier, I would love from what I've heard here tonight, at least Andrew and yourself, to work with Fishback on that.
Because it's not onerous, but it's just not there. It's not quite
What
there.
about Monday?
believe
We
you.
could dive into it a little bit on Monday.
Yes.
Monday.
Oh, at our strategic planning meeting. Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
We could
Like,
rough up where we want to go with
Right.
it, and the other two could go from there. We have another meeting Monday.
Mhm.
Every week we have a meeting, whether we need it.
Because I hate this to be onerous, that it turns into like a back and forth, because
Yes.
it's sort of like, oh, well, we write notes. Well, the note wasn't clear, or well, what did you really mean by that? And then it turns into, it's a back and forth. I think it just,
I'd like the
almost
two of
like
you
one
to
and
actually
done.
work with John and bring something back that we feel comfortable with.
well, yeah,
That's
but
what I'm-
Laura suggested one. Workshop is another, but that's more onerous because that's a special meeting. I don't know what council, this is a council, just what do you guys want to do? Because if it was, say, the mayor suggested Andrew and I,
Right.
I'm fine with that, but I don't want to,
I don't want
if anybody just think we're
Anybody else?
including, right?
no,
So-
just. I-
Three
a couple
together,
things I'll
we're making
tell you, and
decisions.
You know, if you could bring them up, that'd be great.
Right.
And
Okay.
I trust you, Barbara.
Yep. And you will work with Barbara.
My initial thought is Monday may be a tough turnaround. but
Absolutely.
I, instead of us all getting together and starting from square one and going a loop, I think having two people meet, walk through open items. The other
100%.
members of council can provide, hey, here's the things I'm interested in, request that follow-up. And
Okay.
then once we have that updated version, we get together to walk through it
And I'm
and
happy,
review a final. I think that makes
yeah,
sense.
I'm
Are you
happy to
happy
have
with that?
I could have have a clean copy, and then I can make annotations on what that council member's feedback, so I make sure it's incorporated in, because it might be your comments on a different page than mine, or it could be the same,
And
right?
Andrew, are
I don't
you
know.
comfortable to be part of
I
a group
think
with
to
Barbara?
expedite this is if we digitize our comments.
Yes.
We can get them out, and then Barbara and I can sit and go
Right.
through
Great.
edits and not be there holding the pen for
Great.
hours and hours.
Absolutely.
I don't think that would be the best use of John's time.
Yep. So you have to do your work
But
between
it
the
is-
two of you
It could be
first.
onerous for him to have to digitize his comments versus a phone call.
Well, if we have the edits, at least if we have, because I have my edits as digital, so if we send him a copy and say, here's where we could go, or do we just?
You
go
have yours
through-
on your copy and you're gonna.
Well,
write
I'd have
those through.
to, I mean,
If you.
I
if there's
have
a
them on
hand-
here, but they're not in a form that the consultant would be able to say, oh, I know exactly what she means, because I'm talking about. So I would go through on all the pages that I have it and have to, it's like, I don't
Right.
know that I should have to spend several hours doing that when it's an easy conversation.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'd say, let's just go through those and then we'd.
Do what you can, clean them up.
Council members to provide him.
Where's John?
The left out.
Are you comfortable with the two of them following up with you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good.
I just think it would be easier, because then you can say, oh, is this
Excellent.
what you mean? And then you don't have
Digitize
to
verbal.
camera.
Set up a meeting with John when it's.
And you're both comfortable to be on that?
So just,
Great.
if we miss what
Get it right.
You
John's,
okay with that?
Fully supportive.
You okay?
yeah, and just,
Little left out.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll give you a hug later.
so just to fill in, because John just made a
So
comment
far.
from the peanut gallery. He said an iterative process would be most helpful to him. Iterative meaning he's getting, it's a back and forth to clarify it, and then he gets it. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So
Is that fair?
did you follow up
Okay.
with John tomorrow? Daylight's burning tomorrow? Let's get her done. Looking for a draft motion then to go forward.
Maybe we work through Michelle to fine with our
Yep,
calendars. I mean, we'll-
absolutely.
Yeah,
we
I
can-
mean,
we can
yeah,
work with
I
that.
don't know
Yeah,
that it's
let's-
tomorrow.
I don't think we need to
Depends
get
what
that
works
in
for-
here.
Yeah, Michelle will work with you, John, and
Yeah.
these two.
Yeah, sounds good. So how do you want this motion to read?
Just the
Then, given
draft,
that,
that draft.
Draft motion.
and nothing after that, that's it?
Yep. Yep,
Okay.
it's up draft motion.
I move that the 2025 downtown parking study be received as a draft and so it doesn't, it's just received as a draft. It doesn't need to be filed with the
Right.
city clerk, it's a draft, so.
And then we'll have, just as my comment, captured in the minutes, the purpose of the discussion. So we should be okay, right? Is that?
Yep.
That's right. The only thing is,
If you wanted, you could add another provision to the motion and further request that it be brought back before the council in a certain period of time, but I don't know what that reasonable period of time would be.
Well, that's really dependent because I don't want
Or
to be
just be
onerous
brought
on
back to council.
Fishback
If
either.
we want
so-
to keep it open, brought back to council because we don't know. if
Okay,
it's next
so,
month or
so let's see, I
next quarter.
move that the 2025 downtown parking study draft be received and the final report submitted to city council at a subsequent date.
I'm comfortable with
Is
that.
Yep.
I'll support it.
Okay, so we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion on this motion? I think we can do this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes.
Thank you, John.
Great. Thank you very much, John. We appreciate all the work on that. Looking forward to even more. Let's go to new business. B, consideration of approving the request for rezoning down at the old McDonald Ford site. Justin. So this is a labor of love. This has been going on for 4.5 years. We are getting so close. We are looking to close maybe in early February on this. And you're going to tell us all about what happened at Planning Commission and their request to go forward. We are working with the township. It has been a great opportunity. We plan, looking backwards, May 1st to have a farmer's market at that location. So we have a lot of work to do. We are trying to do the planning to do that. So not to steal any of your thunder, but just to give them the recap of 4 years in 40 seconds.
Thanks for the introduction. Good evening. The Planning Commission held the public hearing for this rezoning request at its meeting on Tuesday, 2 days ago. They recommended approval. The request is from Jeff Snyder to rezone the property, and that is a condition that is in the purchase agreement the township has with him for that property. So it's a stipulation of the purchase agreement. The township cannot close on the property if it's not rezoned to this specific district. He requested R1B, that's single family residential. In your packet, the staff report that went to the Planning Commission and our review of the request is in there. There's a draft motion for your consideration. This is to approve the first reading. If you move it along tonight, then it would be back at your next meeting for final adoption. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer it.
So again, we've been working with the township. We have a consortium for the land agreement for the front and the back. We were going to close on the back. They were going to close on the front. We are going to go to the closings together on that. The concept, I don't have too many questions because I have 4 years of activity in this. So from that, we are very pleased that we are so close to it, but the plan is May 1st to be there. We will look at the lot. We'll look where the farmers should be. This was a request of the seller. That's the only reason we could do a farmer's market there. You were very nice. We could do a farmer's market under the zoning that it is. We want to go to closing. So we're meeting all the requirements of the seller right now. Would that be correct?
That's accurate. Yes, they cannot close on the sale without the rezoning.
Yeah.
Tony, is there anything to add to legally? You worked on the agreement with the consortium that we're buying it with the township. And we are so pleased. We are working with the township together to have this Norfolk community area. Again, we call it the farmer's market, but it's farmer's market. It's for, getting ready for parades and the staging area. It's for festivals. It's for car shows. It's for the county wants to be involved and private partnerships and grants in the future. So farmer's market for short. Anything to add?
No, I think that's exactly right. This, just to restate, this is a request by the current owner, and it's a condition within the purchase agreement of the subsequent owner, which would be if condition is met, along with others, the township.
Great, thank you. Go right ahead. Questions?
Justin, 3 questions, as a former planning commission alum. So I'm going to get right into some of my favorite ordinances with you. So, couple things. So we're looking at section 3.03/D, which is special land uses. I don't expect you to know that off the top of your head. I'll unpack it for you, but as we go through what the usage is, so as we go from a GCD with the 7-mile overlay over to the R1B, the farmer's market, as far as I can tell, would be a publicly owned and operated library, park, pathway, or recreational facility. I assume that's it. So the preface of the question is, we can still go through zoning on this. We can zone it R1B as required in the contract. And then subsequent to that, after closure, we can come back and get the special use approval, correct?
Yeah, the consortium would then have to file a special land use application to effectuate the use on the property.
Okay, all right, very good. And then I'll get to that in a little bit more here. So with respect to the consortium, it says publicly owned and operated. Is it your opinion and is it Tony's opinion that the consortium, even though we'll have the mayor and the supervisor and 2 of their appointees, that is a public entity? And would there be a scenario where if it was a third-party entity, is that an issue?
I don't want to speak for Tony, but it's my opinion that that is a public entity. They may have an operator that they allow to utilize a property, but it's publicly owned.
Okay. So I just want to make sure there. Tony, are you? Okay with that?
I'm certainly in agreement with that. We did enter into this, the cooperative under the Urban Cooperation Act, which is Act 7 of 1967, which specifically creates a public entity. Yes.
Okay, very good. So I just want to make sure, because as we move to R1B, that we're not going to get tripped up on it. So that's where these questions are coming from. And then the third one is outside of section 3 of the zoning. It's the master plan. So if you look at the prior version of the master plan, I think from 2018, 2019, it didn't necessarily denote R1B was an acceptable usage in that. However, when we did the master plan update in 20 and 21, we had identified by that time that the market would be in that location and was agreed to as part of the master plan sub area update. So I know there was some discussion on whether R1B is acceptable in where the master plan is going with that. But I think as long as we look at the special use of it, I don't think we're violating, let's say, the spirit and intent of the master plan update. Do you have a thought on that?
My opinion, you're not. The 2018 master plan called for a mix or a variety of uses in that area, residential, commercial, office. It doesn't necessarily mean a mix of uses on a specific parcel. It's the entire sub area that is intended to be a mix of uses. So one parcel could have a mix of uses, one could have a single use. Actually, under the current zoning GCD with the SMO overlay on this parcel, because it's adjacent to the county park, the zoning ordinance allows it to have single family residential. So somebody could construct single family under the current zoning if certain criteria were met.
So it also helps that in the sub area update that we called out as a planning commission, that a market would be there, and that aligns with R1B. So when special use comes in, they can also point to that and say that's the intent of that piece of land.
I would agree with that.
Yes. Okay, I'm set. So I think that this is then more or less procedural.
Yep.
And based on that, based on the input from you and Tony, I'm comfortable.
Excellent. I'll be 10 seconds and then I'll hand it over. So thank you, Councilmember Krenz. That was an excellent breakdown of the decision. I personally don't feel like this is necessarily required because public use is permitted on a general commercially district zone property. However, it does provide the seller with comfort that by going to R1B, we're going to be using it for public use, which is our intent. And ultimately, a transaction like this comes down to trust between the city, the township, and the seller on the overall purpose, given the nature of what we're trying to go into. So I am comfortable. I think it's the right answer. I know there were some concerns raised during planning, and if for some reason the sale did fall through, we could come back and revisit the zoning discussion, is my understanding. So at this point, unless any of that information is incorrectly stated, I'm comfortable moving forward.
That is all accurate.
Great.
Yeah, excellent.
So,
Barbara?
yeah, and I will just one point of a clarification. This request for rezoning comes from the seller of the property, Jeff Snyder, and the Charter Township of Northville. So they're dual requester. Co-applicants, but in fairness, the township wouldn't be asking for if it wasn't condition of the sale of the property.
That is correct.
So just from an accuracy standpoint. It is currently zoned, oh, and I would say I went to the planning commission meeting where this was discussed, the two together. That was very, very helpful. Mark Abbo, township supervisor, was there, as well as Jeff Snyder, and they spoke and had a Q&A with the planning commission. So that was helpful for me to be there nicely as a spectator in the back, but that was very helpful. So a general commercial district as it's currently zoned with a 7-mile overlay is perfect in all regards. The master plan is great in having it that way. And in fact, this use that we will be doing is great. And this is simply, and thank you, Justin, as you always do, the analysis you gave to the planning commission was wonderful. The staff analysis, what do you do when you're thinking of a zoning map amendment? Thank you. As I say, you don't just give them a fish, you teach people how to fish. And that's very evident in the material we have here before us. So I'm supportive of this simply because, as you know, we've been dealing with this with and it's always one more thing. And this is it.
This is correct.
This is what the seller wants. It's for his own comfort level, whatever gets him there.
Yes.
I'm fine with. And this does no harm, right? And it is not irreversible.
I think,
So that is
to note what the planning commission said in their, reasons for making their finding of a recommendation of approval. It's the intended use of the property, the uniqueness of the request, and the proposed partnership with the township. It was a combination of all those things that really moved this ahead.
Yes, and they actually wanted to make it a motion conditional on the execution of the agreement, but that you cannot do that. We cannot do it, they cannot do it.
Right.
So you can't say we're going to rezone if this sales agreement is executed. It doesn't work that way.
Conventional zonings can't be conditioned under law.
No, and you were very clear with them on that. It's very great. And clear that we cannot do that either. Because that might say, well, why don't you just add that condition? No, it's not allowed. It's got to be clean. And so thank you very much for your work and support and your support of the planning commission as well.
Councilperson Jeanette.
Justin, I have nothing.
You've answered it all. For
yeah, thank you. And it's so nice to have someone like you.
It is. Thank you for all your research and I put 400 or 500 hours into this. You have put almost that much in a short amount.
Happy to help at the end. I know it's been a long process.
Thank you. I know it wasn't an option.
There's also people out here who put 1,000 each.
So we had a whole planning commission area that looked at this. We had a whole subcommittee, a task force. Spent 4 years looking at this. So I thank each and every one of you, both farmers market.
Yeah, not
pardon me.
rezoning.
Different task forces, but I appreciate the farmers market group. There's about 25 of them on it. And this was the spot and they gave us all the reasons. So we have been working diligently, all of us, to make this happen.
Last clarifying question, Mayor and Justin, is so final reading and votes February 3rd, next council meeting.
Yes.
And then at that point, all conditions are met for closing of the contract.
Correct. That's Mark Abbo said at the planning commission meeting that's the last pre-sale condition that needs to be satisfied.
So just hypothetically, you could have this over and done with by the 4th.
So theoretically,
He said.
not to really go for, we theoretically are trying to set up a February 4th closing.
No,
Yeah,
but all I'm saying is after the 3rd, that is the last condition to be met. That's just.
that's correct.
There will not be one more thing.
It's my understanding that they're legally obligated to close after that.
So there'll be a lot of opportunities if not.
Let's leave this here.
Sorry, I couldn't help.
The last condition I've had.
So with that, you have everybody's questions here. Does anybody like to speak on this? Come right up to the mic. This is your time because I
Thank you
see
so
some
much,
of you that
Justin.
have been on the committee. Thank you, Justin. Stay close.
Hi, I'm Susan Haefley, 308 South Wing Street. I was lucky enough to be on the Farmers Market Task Force under the leadership of Andrew Krentz and then became the chair when Andrew became city council. I just want to thank everybody here and everybody who's been involved with this. I know this has been an unbelievable challenge.
Opportunity.
An opportunity. And the fact that we're this close, whatever these requirements are, and I share all of the challenge that I hear, and that we're this close and the opportunity for this partnership along with the township, it fulfills on so many things that we stand for our community. And it's also very supportive. We're supportive of it as the sustainability team as well, because one of our missions is to make sure we have regional cooperation. And I really think in the future, we're all going to look back on this and just be so proud of, even though it was not the easiest road and it's not over yet. I just had to get up and say that because I'm just thrilled that we're this close.
Thank you, Susan, for all you've done on this too. Appreciate it.
Reason 370 Fairbrook. I'm all for the farmer's market, but one thing I'd like to ask from you guys, some transparency. How much is this going to cost us for the property that we're purchasing? And how much are we going to owe the township for their half of what they've already put into it? And I want to know how much this building is going to cost. Nobody says anything about the money. I want to know, I want to put out in the website how much this whole project's costing us. Okay? I'd appreciate.
I think you'll get that clarity, but.
I know, but before it happens, you guys gonna close on.
And I think it's out there
We have-
in many forms.
We had it at this meeting.
I know this is not a Q&A.
last
It'll be
time I-
dirt for quite some time and then we'll do a bill.
About it, you didn't know how much you were paying for the property. You can look at the minutes.
We will give you all the information tomorrow.
All right.
Yep.
Is it gonna be millions of dollars? Where are we getting the money to? We saw a fire truck to buy this farmer's market.
We've sold a fire truck for other reasons, but we have different
That's
grants and
one thing I want
what.
to find out.
Nope, yep, sorry. I'm engaging, as I tell everybody. Thank you so much. We will get all that information to you. Let's talk tomorrow morning on that. Thank you. Any other comments of life out here? Going once, going twice. I am closing off public comment on this. I am looking for a motion to go forward on this. You have a sample motion in there.
I'm gonna take.
He's gonna take it out. Good.
Good, please do. As the chair of the Farmers Market Committee, please do. Thank you.
I can't stress how many people got us here. That's this lucky community we have here. So I move to introduce for the first reading, the proposed zoning amendment to rezone 550 South 7 Mile Road from GCD General Commercial District with SMO 7 Mile South Main Street overlay to R1B First Density Residential with second reading possible adoption scheduled for February 3rd, 2005.
Support. So we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'd like a roll call vote on this one, please.
Carter,
Yes.
Janetti,
Yes.
Krenz,
Yes.
Borowski Brown,
Yes.
Turnbull.
Absolutely. Thank you. Unanimously, we have approved that. There'll be a second reading. If you want any more comments on that, that will be February 3rd here on that. Let's go to, we added 9C, which is a consideration resolution to apply for the revitalization and placemaking grant for the streetscape. Would you like to educate us on that and anybody else from your staff?
So the DDA and the city are looking to put in a grant for the construction of a curbless street on the one block of Main Street from Center to Hutton. This is something that the DDA has already supported, but we need city council to pass a resolution of support. One of the reasons we wanted this removed from the consent agenda was because we had to add an additional line to the resolution. So I want to hand out the new resolution to council. It has highlighted the change. I can read it out loud.
And you will read it out.
Knows what we're talking about here. So what this is we have a project to, first I'll just start with the RAP grant. The RAP grant is a grant for placemaking and for infrastructure projects that help to revitalize or to maintain activity and placemaking in communities. This process started just after COVID when there was money to create, yes, just one page. Sorry.
One page, there's a lot of one pages.
To be able to do infrastructure projects. And the goal of RAP is to have community support, to have a 50-50 match of money. So RAP will not provide any more than 50% of the funds. So what we have here is that council has adopted a strategic priority all the way back about 18 months ago, as I mentioned, where we said we would look at the opportunity for curbless streets in the core downtown. We've taken a number of steps since then. We did a feasibility study or a preliminary engineering study sponsored by both the DDA and by City Council. Last May, we adopted that. It was a $42,000 preliminary engineering split by both the DDA and the city. That was completed, found to be feasible. We then found this opportunity for this RAP grant. So this creates a great opportunity for us because of the fact that it is a curbless street and it promotes sort of the economic development, the vibrance, the activity, the multi-use, the pedestrian access, that this grant process allows us to be able to utilize this money for reconstruction of the street, the placemaking, all of that. So it really is a great opportunity to apply for this grant and hopefully benefit from this money. You know, obviously at this point, until we get the grant or until we know if we're going to get the grant, no decisions have been made. This is just one more step in exploring this, but we think we have a strong possibility because it is a very strong, I think, grant and a very strong project that hopefully MEDC would support. So with that, I'll go ahead and read the additional clarification we had to provide was MEDC wanted to hear that if the project moves forward, that the city has the funding to do the project. So what we added was such funds to be made available from a combination of the general fund balance and or general obligation bonds. What we would envision if we do move forward is that the DDA and the city would bond for the streetscape improvements, likely to about $1 million of improvements, and that the city's general fund would front $1 million of improvements for construction. The RAP grant would then reimburse at the end of the project the $1 million back into the city's general fund. So that's why we wouldn't necessarily want to bond for the full amount because it would be a very short-term borrowing for about half the money. But
Please read that slower.
You can have a copy. You can give her a copy.
There's copies right here.
There's multiple ones. Yep, he'll bring them to you. Go right ahead.
Does anybody else want one? It's just the edit to the resolution. Does anybody want one? Anybody else?
so with that, Lori, myself can answer questions that council might have about the resolution.
And just for edification, we do plan between Griswold and Hutton to redo that road. New street, new curbing will be about $800,000 or $900,000. That is in the plan of the city. We plan on doing between, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hutton and Center Street, and that would be about $800,000 or $900,000, rounded up to $1 million. We are looking for a grant to make that second section quite something, you know. We're going to spend $1 million. It's in the budget. It's been planned for years. We would do it for $2 million. For part of that, we might have to do the curbing. It doesn't take any parking spaces away. It would work really well on the bollards on weekends, you know, and God forbid if we do it just weekends or open or close. This has nothing to do with opening and closing the streets. We are going to do those two sections sometime. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this would make it a little bit different between Hutton and Center Street. But to do that, it's the curbless that rolls up. So you won't be able to sit on a curb. But remember, too, our biggest liability is trip and falls. And that is a great opportunity here, not only us, but throughout the metro. We redid the curbs over here. We had 3 trip and falls next door. But that is just something. This has nothing to do with opening or closing the streets, no matter how, we all have different views on that, but my opinion. No Q&A at this time. I appreciate it.
So I can also talk further about the fact about the project, just I'll provide an additional clarification.
Please do.
So at this point, the first block that we talked about for Main Street is in need of rehabilitation. When I first got here, Lori had already budgeted money to do concrete repair and asphalt repair around the clock tower that has not aged well and is in need of repair. So at this point, we would be looking at in the near future at a resurfacing, curb and gutter, repair to the bricks, repair to the concrete of that one block street. That estimate to do a resurfacing and repair of that street is somewhere in the range of about $800,000, I believe the number was. I'm looking at Lori for if she can nod yes or no, but not 700.
779.
779, okay.
I rolled it up to 8.
So, or we could look at a full reconstruction, including going all the way almost to the fronts of the stores, about 6 feet off the front of the stores, replacing the planters, redesigning the planters, putting new electrical into those, new water, because we have irrigation in there. All of these things that have aged and are now getting sort of a little bit older in terms of their expected usefulness. At this point, we could have a grant for $2 million that reconstructs all of that. So really, for the additional $220,000, we get the opportunity to have a full reconstruction of the street, which would last for many more years than just doing a rehabilitation of it. We also get new infrastructure in the sort of band where the planters are. So it really does create a much nicer project and getting much greater value if we're able to utilize the grant. Of course, we got to see if we get the grant. It's competitive. Lots of communities want these grants. But again, I think we have a good project. And then if we do get the grant, the DDA and the city council will have to make a decision on whether they want to move forward with the project at that point.
And we don't accept every grant. We got $8 million worth of grants last year. There's more out there. We just didn't think they were right. We're looking for the opportunity to have that as an option in the future, in my opinion. Is that correct? We don't accept it.
So, yeah, and I'm going to follow up on a couple items, George, and I'll need your help with them. In terms of, I'm glad you brought up the streetscape improvements. Now we're talking the area between Center Street and Hutton. Those, which is within this grant, is that there are a lot of things the DDA wants and needs to do with things falling apart around the planters, around the trees, the electrical you mentioned, irrigation, that are going to require DDA investments, certainly in the near term, but they must be done in the next 5 to 7 years. Just have to be. Those are all wrapped into this on that, because I don't know how the DDA with their current budget would pay for those things. That would extend this improvement like over a 15-year period, right? When George mentioned that 770, that roughly 800,000, and these are OHM estimates, that 800,000 didn't include any of those improvements. That's dealing with the surface curb, right? Correct?
Correct.
So it's like an app, it's not even comparable. And we have to make that investment. We can't leave the streets in the current condition they're in. The area that I know is on the DDA's priority and they've wanted to do it for a long time is that area between Hutton and Griswold. That has never been fully done the way the other core part of the downtown was. It was always in the plan to do it. It was just never done. So that investment will be moving forward. This is an opportunity and this was in the consent agenda, but there was very rich information in a DDA packet where the DDA board discussed this, where OHM laid out the alternatives. You could do this and it would cost this much or this and that. And it was really, really helpful. And that really opened my eyes on some of these cost strategies and changes. The other, and help me with this, George, is that these are not the monies that we would be using for that. They're not monies that would go to local street improvements.
Correct.
That is a key,
Correct. So if the DDA were to bond for this, the DDA right now has debt, I believe about a debt service payment about $200,000 a year for past infrastructure projects. That debt is falling away in the pretty near future. So this year, there you go.
2025.
So we would be able to replace debt. It might be a slightly higher price, but we're really, you're taking on the same debt payment, but you're getting new infrastructure work. So, and the DDA can't spend infrastructure money, any of its money outside the district.
Right.
So this money has to go for streets, projects, whatever it may be in the district. This, of course, would be what the DDA is sort of made for, is for doing these types of infrastructure improvements in the downtown. So can't be spent elsewhere. And of course, what I mentioned about the city's general fund, that would only be for the gap. And if we were notified we got the grant, to front the money till we were reimbursed by the grant. So there would not be an expenditure from the general fund over time. It would just be a short-term construction payment. We get the money back.
Yeah, and I just my perspective on this is that I don't know that we needed to edit the resolution, but it certainly is clearer on where that money might come from. But I don't know that the MEDC needs to know if we're committing that we can cover our reimbursable costs. I don't think they care
No.
where we get it, but it certainly provides clarity. And if that's what they want, then that's.
That's exactly what they wanted. We thought that we wanted to make
Okay.
sure that
That's why you
council
got it.
had committed to the fact that the money was available,
Okay.
the funding was
Yeah.
available.
Understand.
So that's
But-
why we wanted that extra.
But it isn't like it
No.
completely changed the resolution. It just added that wording, which was true either way. It just wasn't stated, right? So.
Right. Others.
I do. I'm just gonna, this will explain when I vote, and I know that's how I'll keep it, but I'm concerned about moving to curbless streets. It won't be, that it won't benefit the downtown as much as maybe create some problems. Partly because of all of our Michigan basements and things like that. That's a big worry. And curbs obviously play an important role. For now, I worry about it being a practical. I understand it's a grant, but I don't think this aligns with our priorities right now, just in my own opinion. It doesn't solve a significant problem. And to support the businesses, we could find like more practical solutions, like, the parking as we're working on that. Maybe even some snow removal for Main and Center Street, just a little bit, since things don't open till a little bit later on in the day. It's the people in the middle clear. I watch them do over by CVS and those walking areas and not on Main and Center. So those are like practical things I think that could support the downtown. I don't know that this is practical right now. It's a high priority.
Good point. We will do a roll call because of that.
Please do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Good. So again, this is for the opportunity to even think about us getting that grant. So we're not approving a grant. We're not approving going forward with that today. Correct?
Correct.
As I listen to you. John.
Yeah, so first, I fully support pulling this off of the consent agenda.
Yes.
It has captured the attention of our community, and these are important decisions. I want to just emphasize that point, that this is not a final decision on curbless streets.
Yes.
This is a decision to provide approval for the city to apply for the MEDC RAP grant. As George mentioned a moment ago, and I'm going to try to quote here, if we do get the grant, DDA and City Council will need to decide if they want to move forward with this project. The DDA has expressed and voted on exploring curbless streets on Main as an option, and funding for street repairs or the required match would come from DDA, as is mentioned. So for me, this grant is ultimately us doing the work to identify and obtain the data to make an educated decision. We need to repair Main Street. We know that that's been a consistent conversation. Anyone who's been down there recently has seen that there are bricks that are starting to crumble. And that is the jewel of our town, Main and Center. We have to have a thriving downtown. We have to invest in it. This is within the DDA. DDA funds are going to be leveraged, so their input is critical. I'll be transparent with everyone. I haven't made a final decision on curbless streets. But as I said, within Coffee with Council, cost to anyone who came to Coffee with Council, so thank you. Cost is going to be a primary driver in that discussion. If there's no grant, I would suspect that it becomes highly likely that it is not a viable option because the gap between traditional curbs and curbless streets is too large. If we get a grant and it says that curbless streets are cost competitive, and competitive is relative, but are competitive with a longer period between maintenance, then it would be irresponsible to not have a discussion. And my view is that's when we would need to have a detailed conversation on public safety. We need to get the viewpoint of local businesses and the building owners. We would need to have a conversation around ADA accessibility and how this will work relative to that, how parking will function, and an implementation timeline, because we have to think about with curbless versus traditional, how long is the street going to be torn up? What's the impact on the businesses associated with that, and plan through it. So as we go through the vote here, I want everyone to understand, I'm right now saying I'd like to know what that cost structure looks like. And based on that, we can have a conversation if we want to move forward and say, okay, let's talk through what these other factors are so that we can make a final decision. And I think that has to be done in conjunction. Well, I don't even think it has to be done in conjunction with DDA, given their role in this process.
Together.
My second comment that I'm going to make, and this is a little bit tangential, but I feel like it's a good opportunity to address it. I may be the second worst on council when it comes to social media. Laura, I think I have you beat, but not by much. It's close. This isn't focused on any individual site or next door discussion, but I've had a number of people share childish insults, name calling, accusations of members of DDA, of planning, of this body related to the farmer's market, related to the curbless streets, the downs, and it frankly, it goes both ways. And that's why I say it's not about one site, because I hear sarcastic comments that then go the other way as well. I've spent hours discussing topics with all of you before and after meetings, at Coffee with Council, and extensive email discussions. It's actually one of my favorite parts of the role. And frankly, I will be the first to acknowledge it's changed my opinion on various topics or provided me details that's caused me to approach a topic differently than I would have. I greatly appreciate those. The thing I want to raise is when I talk to our business owners and I ask what's the biggest challenge they're facing, it usually isn't the things that everybody thinks is going to be brought up. It's that Northville's getting a reputation that we just like to fight with each other. And all I would encourage is you will convince the members of this body, the members of the DDA, the members of planning through civil discourse, through conversation and facts far more effectively than name calling. So just in general, wanted to encourage that we consistently try to do our best. It's not, again, directed at the people that I chat with before and after, because I love those conversations. I don't want those to stop, but I think that we as a community can continue to work together on these things and we don't need to tear each other down.
Thank you, John. Anything else?
All right, the curse of going last year, I suppose.
Yes.
I support everything you said. Also, it's not for here now, but I've also received my name used in a very poor way on social media by well-known people in this community, but that's a discussion for another day. Extremely disappointing, and we're all better than that. Coming back to this is, and by the way, our kids read this. Our kids in high school read this. Do better. We're the adults in the room, all of us. All right, so when it comes to this, again, this is just pursuit, as Councilmember Carter said, of information. So I'm agnostic on this right now. I don't know where I want to go just yet. I think we have time to figure that out. I think we have time for more inputs. Tonight's not the night, though. Tonight's the night to pursue if we want to have a multiplier effect on something that we might want to do, which I think our obligation is to pursue such a thing. And then also work in parallel to get more information. That's absolutely the right thing to do. Anything outside of that, I would perceive as delinquent, to at least go pursue something or to approve pursuing something. So when we get to it, when the time comes and it's not tonight, I'm looking at final cost exposure outside of DDA. I'm looking at DDA input, and I'm going to put a lot of value in the DDA input because, as was noted, the businesses know their problems better than anybody and what their opportunities are. So I'm going to give deference to the people whose livelihoods depend on what we do, first and foremost, just so you know. I think DDA does already have some conclusions. I have to spend some time getting to that. And I'm not going to overrule the people whose livelihoods depend on this unless there's something broadly significant. Grant timing is important. Safety, obviously, we're going to be requesting a report. I'd be looking for something maybe from police, or if somebody else has safety in other communities and what we've seen. We're obviously not going to support anything where there's an erosion in safety. But we just have to see what that all looks like. But again, that's not tonight. Tonight is pursuing a grant, and I'm going to limit my comments to that. There's a lot we have to do at a future time. So I'm going to be in support of this.
Thank you very much. Anything else from council?
I was following up on both what John and Andrew said, is that for the DDA discussion on this topic, I was at that meeting, was similar in terms of support for going for the grant, but knowing there needed to be a more detailed discussion on some of these things. And I fully support that as well. So it's
great. Is there any other discussion, any other public input? Going once, going twice? Come right up, Mayor. Yep.
Oh, did I?
First of all, I just wanted to address Council Member Carter. I'm a moderator of a Facebook page, as you probably know. I cringe every time I see personal remarks out there. It is a free country. You cannot block everyone who says something of a personal nature to someone. I did actually publicly remove and block a person from my page today because the comments just kept coming and we're going too far. So I would just say to you, welcome to social media. This is why people enjoy it, unfortunately. And you see a lot of those cringeworthy remarks even on the city's Facebook page. So sorry, you're just gonna have to grow a thicker skin. So then Mayor Pro Tem mentioned that there was a lot of rich data that was at a DDA meeting. And I think that it would be helpful to people such as myself trying to understand this issue and be fair about it if it was presented to the community at large. So even though I understand that this is just an option that you're looking at, and I understand you're kind of running out of runway, that isn't the application must be submitted by the 30th. So we can't do it at this time, but I think at some time, a presentation of that depth of information would be useful to the community at large.
I agree.
And there are pluses and minuses to curbless streets. There are a lot of deficits. And as I mentioned in my letter to you, I do think that it would be helpful to the community, not just to convince those of us who are somewhat biased against curbless streets, to have an urbanist come and look at our specific situation and tell us whether this is good or bad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks. Appreciate it. Anybody else at this point? Going once, going twice? Closing off public comment. I would like a roll call vote on this in a moment. Looking for a motion that's in your package to go forward on this. Or not, the sample motion you have.
I have it in front of me. I can do it.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. So I move to approve a resolution in support of revitalizing and placemaking 3.0 grant through Michigan Economic Development Corporation for streetscape enhancements on Main Street from Hutton to Center Street.
So I have a motion. Do we have support for that motion?
Support.
Support. Any other discussion? I know there's been 7 or 8, if you look at the package, 7 or 8 other requests from different committees to support this. So this is the final, should we go forward for this? But in that package with them, we have all those support documents. We went to one the other day, Ms. Janetti and I, for what the senior advisory, they did it. Good. So with that, Clerk Smith, if you could do a roll call vote on this, please.
Sure. Janetti,
No.
Krenz,
Yes.
Borowski Brown,
Yes.
Turnbull,
Yes.
and Carter.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. That passes to go for the opportunity to look at it. Closing off, Mayor and Council Communications.
We have,
Oh, that's right. I added. I forgot. I put that scribble in there. We need that motion early on because we couldn't put it in that area, said our illustrious lawyers. So would you like
I
to?
believe we have completed conversation on it, so I'm comfortable moving to the motion if everyone's supportive.
Just introduce the topic.
Yep.
The topic was, this is a follow-up to the sustainability team's presentation. Topic at hand is city council's support of the sustainability team. And so I move to confirm city council's support of the sustainability team and the vital role it plays in supporting and advising city council, our city officials, and the other committees and commissions serving this community.
So I have a motion. Do we have support for that motion?
I support it.
Support for Ms. Janetti. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I think we can do this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Last thing I saw, I couldn't see Lori Ward at the beginning because she was behind everybody. This past week, we are all jealous. She has announced she might retire. I would love to retire. She is younger than I am, of course. We all would like to retire. After 27 years of working here and a year before this as a consultant, she has done so much for the city of North. We are a better community because we've had Lori Ward here. We will have gatherings and festivities and the whole bit, but I just wanted to thank Lori. And I think we all owe you a round of applause for everything you've done. Thank you. You will all have time to talk to her. It's come to us pretty quick, so we will get activities going.
Did I put a footnote on?
Yes, you can. Oh, great one.
She,
Yes.
Lori is not leaving
Just yet.
soon.
Right.
And she will be here through the transition. So she's not abandoning us.
That is correct.
No, we wish her well.
That is correct.
So just.
We are all jealous. I am jealous. You know that, for goodness sakes. With that, just winding down, on those comments that John said, whatever, I had a young mother in Northville, give me these 2 hats. It says, be kind. And that's part of it. I had those out there at one time. In life and in business, there are kind of 3 rules that I always said in the boardroom. Is it factual before you speak? Is it necessary? And is it kind? So I truly appreciate that. No, in Norfolk, a lot going on this coming week. You got a big concert, I think, down at the Marquee on Saturday night. Billy Joel and Elton John impersonators or what have you. The VFW is celebrating their 80th anniversary. Big deal for them. And the Victorian Festival, or the Victorian Tea at the Mill Race is going on, and the Norfolk Community Awards on the 6th. They asked me to mention that. But I thank everybody again for all the input. We have 27 boards and 5 different task forces. 7% of our citizens are involved. I thank each and every one of them. That's why we're able to get things done. That's all I have tonight. Big basketball game tomorrow night, too. Thank you very much. Duly noted.
No additional comments.
Good.
I have
Anything?
one just minor comment is it has been requested on multiple occasions that we come back, been a long time, and address the issue of Zoom meetings. And there's 2 parts to that. One is right now, we only have Zoom for city council meetings. So should we have it for more than? Is there some way to do that in a cost-effective way that, for planning commission, historic district, whatever it may be? That is the first part. The other, and very, very important at the city council level, is being able to have public comment over the line. I mean, there was good reason why we stopped it, but I think there's been plenty of time to look at how can we safeguard, because that was just so, the participation. I mean, I'm glad everybody was here tonight, and that was wonderful to see all these people in the room sitting, through the meeting. But, it's because there were, if there's not a hot button issue, right? And you never know what's going to come up in here, but we had so much more participation before, and people commenting and being engaged. And it makes sense. If you're, depending on your circumstance, it could be that you've got other commitments in the evening that isn't easy for you to leave the house, or they're just more comfortable listening to it with their and doing the dishes while they're listening, right? So I just think we need to, it's time in the near term to come back and talk about what have we explored? What are some solutions so we can move forward on something better than what we have currently, which is a regression from where we were before.
And that could be
So
part of our
that-
strategic planning starting Monday again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good. Any other comments from council members?
Just briefly, if you're walking down right here by Oakwood Cemetery, go in there and take a look. The Cemetery Renewal Task Force is doing some really nice work in there.
Absolutely.
They've fixed old stones. There's a 2-year plan that's going to come in here on the 3rd. It wasn't here tonight because it was my fault. So I'll make sure that it'll be better when it comes in here on the 3rd, but it looks a lot better there. And the 2-year plan is going to be pretty great. So if you're interested in that, in the history on that side, beyond just the structures, come in here on the 3rd and check that out. I also just want to note that Scott Frush was a big supporter of the farmer's market.
Absolutely.
And I think he'd be proud tonight, be happy. So that's it.
Would you like to wrap us up?
Just one item. We talked about it briefly. People have touched upon it, January 27th. So this Monday at 5:30 in this room, we'll be having a special meeting to go through our goal setting and strategic priorities, wrapping up the last 18 months and going forward to the next 2-year priority setting process. So hopefully some good conversation, and look forward to that opportunity with council.
And that's a public meeting.
Of course,
It is a public meeting.
Are we going to do the informal here?
We'll be up here, I think, and I'll be standing there. I think.
Oh, I didn't know if you want, because we've been at roundtable before no?
Yeah.
We'll look at
Yeah,
it
we'll look at it.
between now and Monday.
Pizza.
There's pizza.
Perfect.
Not from Genetti's.
There.
I'm looking for a motion for adjournment. Do I have that motion? Okay, we have support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against? We are